Welcome. The board meeting will come to order at 5:00 p.m. Good evening, and thank you for attending the Albuquerque Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board meeting today on June 11th, 2025. June 12th, I apologize. This is what I get for reading my notes. Ms. Perlick, may I please get a member roll call?
Xander Bullionitz.
Present.
Eduardo Budanaro.
Present.
Aaron Calderon.
Present.
Rowan Weimark.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have a quorum.
Thank you. The next order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next order of business is the approval of the agenda. Do any board members have a proposed change to the agenda as it is currently written?
None at this time.
All right. Then I make a motion to approve the agenda as written. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Perlin, can I get a roll call vote?
Member Bullionitz.
Approved.
Member Budanaro.
Approved.
Member Calderon.
Approved.
Member Weimark.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. Next order of business is the review and approval of minutes. Do any board members have any proposed changes from the minutes of May 7th, 2025?
None. No.
All right. I make a motion that the minutes to be approved as written. Can I get a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Perlin, may I get a roll call vote, please, for the minutes?
Member Bullionitz.
Approved.
Member Budanaro.
Approved.
Member Calderon.
Approved.
Member Weimark.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Perlin. Next order is public comments. I believe we have two individuals signed up for public comments.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. You have the sign-up sheet, and there were no written comments available.
Perfect. Oh, written comments. Thank you. So the first individual is Mr. Jonesy. Did I pronounce that right? Cool. So with these comments, you have 3 minutes.
All right.
Cool. And then after that time, I'll probably interrupt you. So,
Okay.
Ms. Perla, can you start the clock now?
All right. So I'm fairly new to the program here, the Civilian Oversight Board, so I appreciate you having me. The only person I've actually met is Ms. Valerie here, and very briefly, but I wanted to read this comment. So a signature oath, why it is important. An oath presents liability. A contract without liability is not a contract at all. All contracts require signatures in order for them to be legally enforceable. If an official were to choose that they have conscientious scruples against an oath, it would not only erode trust in the office itself, but it would also create a lacking of liability. Liability here is a legal term meaning responsibility for damages due to actions or omissions in the case of contracts, torts, or fines. This means that without liability, that is a signature, there is no accountability for damages caused and no compensation legally required upon the unsigned parties. This is why individually officers are being sued in the city itself, and the city itself must account for those damages. Officers without oaths are costing your city, and they themselves are not off the hook for it. Your chief of police, Medina, believes that he has found a loophole for himself and his officers here in Albuquerque, but he has not. He has found a way to cost you and removed from this city all public trust. The man has no loyalty to his office or this city. He has no loyalty to the Constitution of New Mexico or the United States. According to him, he nor his officers are required to sign the oath. According to him, neither does any public official, nor does any public official have to say the pledge even. According to him, enlisted military wouldn't need to sign the oath. If we go by what the chief or his officers go by, a signature is not important at all. The problem here is that it is. Why sign an arrest affidavit or warrant or contract for that matter, or have any liability at all when the chief and APD officers say it's not required? Here's why. Because nobody believes you. You have no trust. Not from me or the citizens of Albuquerque, or anyone visiting for sure. There is no one who can sign the oath for you. There's no provision in the legal framework that will create liability without the signature. I would say sign the oath. Sign it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jonesy. The next speaker we have is Mr. Utllo. Is that correct? Before you begin here, just a reminder, you have 3 minutes, and Ms. Barilla will be our timekeeper, and so, sir, your time starts now.
And I just want to make sure that I'm addressing the board as fitting as I can. My name is Utllo. I'm a civil rights activist. I'm a firm believer in the First Amendment and all the amendments afforded to us within the Constitution. I'd like to pay particular attention to Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution. Article 6 of the Constitution is also referred to as the Supremacy Clause. It is the establishment of the Supremacy Clause puts the federal law and all the treaties of the state laws together. It also mandates that federal and state officials take an oath to support the Constitution and prohibits religious tests for holding public office. A little detailed breakdown. The Supremacy Clause declares that the Constitution's federal laws and treaties made under the authority of the United States are the supreme law of the land, and that any state laws that conflict with federal laws are invalid. The oath of office. All federal state officials, including your legislatures, your executors, your judges, must take that oath of affirmation to support the Constitution. This oath requires them to bear truth. This oath of allegiance to the Constitution and to be faithfully discharging those duties. Getting back to the religious tests being prohibited. The Constitution prohibits requiring any religious test or qualification for any office or public trust under the Constitution, but it's not a method to bypass the responsibilities and the honor instilled upon people that walk the streets with a gun and a badge. If you folks are here required to sign an oath to the Constitution, doesn't it just make sense that somebody that's walking the streets with a gun and a badge would be required to do so? In fact, I've discovered that the state patrolmen all signed their oath, but there seems to be a written problem with the city of Albuquerque's police not signing their oath. I had to come here. Maybe you folks might want to look into it a little bit further before your state and city cost a lot of money, because you're no longer just going to be able to say it's a cost of doing business.
Thank you, Mr. Utllo. I appreciate your comments here. Awesome. Well, thank you. Any other? All right. Next order of business is the reports from the city department. First one up is APD, and that is the legislative billing related to law enforcement by Xochitl Biggs Campos.
Hello. Thank you for having me here today. I am the Chief Policy Advisor at the Albuquerque Police Department, and I will I was asked to give a briefing on our legislative session that just passed here in 2025 and what we're doing to prepare for 2026. So we went into the session. We had a number of initiatives that we were leading. I will say all of the initiatives that were led, that were brought to me by officers within the department, we did see success. There was the kind of the perspective of our law enforcement officers that where they saw that there were loops or holes in laws that needed to be filled, we were able to address those. And I'll review them now. They are extreme risk protection orders. That's something that came to us from the Crisis Intervention Unit. We worked very closely with our legislators on that and frequently were there to testify. That did pass. DNA of certain offenders into CODIS. That means that for people who were convicted of a crime, after, like, during a certain period of time, their DNA can go into CODIS so that it can fill some of the unknown markers. If someone has committed a crime, if they have left their DNA behind, we may now be able to give some answers to the family. And then we were able to work on our homicide by vehicle legislation, which we didn't get through this session, but we are working on now in the interim. So that was, our officers were seeing an issue when it came to charging for great bodily harm or death that came from reckless driving. And so that is something that we're working on with our legislators now. Like, these are all things that we're working on now. As far as legislation, crime bills that made it through the session, it was HB 8 was a big one that addressed the criminal competency and treatment, so underlying issues, mental health issues, as well as multiple different types of crimes. It was multiple bills that ended up being part of HB 8. It included competency, the lock switch conversion ban, consolidation of vehicle theft bills, threat of a school shooting, fentanyl trafficking, and DWI blood draw. So all of those bills went into HB 8, along with other bills that went to address the underlying mental health issues. The other bills that went through were violent felonies for meritorious deduction, adding racketeering crimes, and law enforcement qualifications, which makes it so that DACA recipients can apply to go to the Law Enforcement Academy and become law enforcement officers across the state. Now, during the interim, we are working on, as I mentioned, the homicide by vehicle. We are also working on asset forfeiture bills. That is equitable sharing. It's something that we want so that we're able to use the resources and funding that comes from convictions to go back into the community. We have legislators that are interested in increasing access to crisis dogs for smaller departments. We have a crisis intervention dog, which frequently made the rounds around the roundhouse. And, but it's also something that we have a lot of access to that other departments don't. We are also going to continue to work on officer recruitment and retention, as that is a problem across the state. And we are working on another piece of legislation around scrap metal regulations to deter copper theft. So that's the nuts and bolts of it, and I'll take any questions.
Board members, do you guys have any questions? I actually do have one. So for HB 8, that bill for the DWI blood draw, can you kind of go into a little more detail of that component of that bill?
The DWI blood draw?
Yes.
So it's one bill, but it's a consolidation of multiple. So the DWI, it expanded DWI enforcement, allowing law enforcement to test for controlled substances when probable cause exists. So that was the expansion of that particular bill when it comes to the DWI blood draw. And we supported a number of these bills before they became part of HB 8. And so one of the big ones that we supported was the stronger penalties for repeat offenders in vehicle theft cases to deter habitual offenders. That was the big one that we were there and present for regularly.
Because I know how mics work. I appreciate that. And then another question I had was, and this was one of the last things you mentioned, was officer recruitment and retention.
Yes.
And you're saying it's a statewide issue. Can you kind of go into a little bit more of kind of what that you guys are trying to do for the retention and recruitment of the officers?
You know, we never stop, and we look at approaching recruitment and retention in a multi-pronged way. Recruitment and retention is a challenge across the state, if not the country. And you see a number of different departments having different issues based on where they are. If it's a small department, they can get recruited by bigger ones. I think we're also looking at being a law enforcement officer as being inherently difficult. It's just incredibly challenging. It's hard work, and it's hard to keep people past the time when they're able to retire, just because there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of pain to your body that people experience, and a lot of times after 20 years, 25 years, people are ready to move on. But we are looking at what are the different ways that we can keep people longer, and I don't have an answer that is like the magic bullet that lots of departments and chiefs associations are looking at, but it's something that we're gonna continue to work on. Whether it's paying people more, whether it's creating more access to benefits post-retirement. I mean, it's really just a challenge as far as trying to understand how to keep people longer and how to bring people into the profession.
No, I absolutely agree, and that's where I was kind of curious, is mostly around the recruitment aspect of it, and then also, you know, of course, retention. So I just was curious about all of that. So
Yeah.
thank you. Any other questions from the board member? All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah. No questions?
Oh, sorry.
I did have a question, but I need. Oh, I'm going to assume intergovernmental relations means that you work closely with your counterparts in other parts of the state. Does that sound correct?
I work with not very many departments have someone like me who works just on policy. So the way my job works is generally what is good for APD as far as legislative policy goes is usually good for other departments as well. So I connect with those departments, I try to learn their issues, and I think one of the biggest challenges with the, like at the legislature is concerns that so much of the effort and concentration and money goes to Albuquerque when some of these issues are being experienced across the state. So by kind of working alongside other chiefs of police, whether it's in Farmington or Artesia, we're able to kind of work on issues that we're all experiencing because we all experience them to a certain degree.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Member Weimark. Any other questions? Okay, now,
No?
thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next order of business is the Internal Affairs Professional Standards report by Commander Johnston.
Good evening, Board. So we had a very good month with IAPS with cases open versus cases closed. We opened 83 cases and we were able to close 107. With that, we are at about a 55-day completion timeline, which I think I told you guys a couple months ago that if I could get it below 75, I'd be ecstatic. We beat that mark, so we're doing really well with that. Our highest policy violation is still OBRD as for sustained, followed by miscourt and code of conduct. And slightly behind that, I believe it was, look at that, the report again. Scheduled and unscheduled leave. So I stand for questions.
Hold up. I have a question about the acronym that comes up from time to time
Which one?
that starts with an N. I don't have it immediately. to hand.
NDCA. That's my guess. So that's non-disciplinary corrective action.
Oh, okay.
So what that is that's for class 7 and class 6s. So just as a reminder, a class 7 is the least grievous policy violation that we have, and a 1 is the most grievous policy violation that we have. NDCAs on our chart of sanctions is only applicable for class 6 and class 7 violations, which are kind of the low end, and also where most of our policy violations come from is from class 6 and class 7s. And in that, an officer right now is the standard practice. If they haven't had an NDCA in their whole career or within at least the last year, they could be eligible for an NDCA. So where it comes down to corrective training from their commander directly to that person or to the division head of what that issue was, where it could be, you didn't go to court for the first time in your career. Let's talk to you about strategies about going to court. I want to make sure that you understand the policy, what your obligations are, and that you know how to file what's called a P30. A P30 is what you can file to excuse yourself from court if you're going on vacation, or if you're going, you know you have something that you're going to be in training for, something to that effect.
Thank you.
Only comment I have is congratulations on being ecstatic.
Yes, the board isn't aware of my retirement will be at the end of the month. I'm sorry, Rowan.
So the real question is who approved the retirement? I think that's the real question. You don't get to retire. Fun facts. I didn't know if you knew that we all, no.
Yeah, there's a vote.
Yeah, there's a vote, and we did not do that.
We declined that vote.
We congratulations, but any other questions? No? All right, well, thank you. And this is this going to be your last time standing in front of us?
Yes, sir.
Well, thanks for
Don't
having
try
me.
not to miss us too much with all the fun that you have here.
You guys do a great job, so thank you very much.
Congratulations on the retirement.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, next order of business is the report from the Internal Affairs Force Division by Commander Norris.
Evening. How's everybody doing? Good. Okay, so for the month of May, saw some changes relative to last month, or I'm sorry, I say last month. Last month I was here and we presented what was in April, but some things have stayed the same. For instance, our highest numbers of uses of force are still in the same area command, southeast in the valley, which is explainable relative to just the calls for service and some of the issues that we run down there. That we run into down there. So that hasn't changed much. However, we did have a decrease in uses of force from April to May. In April, they were at 76 reportable uses of force, and in May, they were down to 51 reportable uses of force. So we had a decrease there, which is good news. Force rate per 1,000 calls for service is averaging maybe around 1.8 if we're looking at 3 specific area commands, the Northeast, Southeast, and Valley. The Northeast and the Valley was really at 1.7, but the Southeast was at 1.8. So every per 1,000 calls for service, there is a use of force that happens almost every 2 calls for service. There is a use of force that happens. Force rate when we arrest somebody per 100 arrests, the lowest was in the Northwest, which was at 1 point. Well, actually, it would be, one arrest per. I'm sorry, 1 use of force per 100 arrests in the Northwest, and 2.8 uses of force per 100 arrests. So for the most part, I mean, our arrests are going relatively peaceful if we're not counting low-level control or something like that. Age range, last month we actually had the number of individuals between the ages of 20 and 29 where we had the highest number of uses of force, and that was at somewhat kind of an outlier relative to those previous months, but we've gone back to what we were seeing in those previous months where We had 18 uses of force with individuals who were between the ages of 30 and 39. Behavioral health involved 19% of our uses of force. We were dealing with a behavioral health issue. That was confirmed that we were dealing with a behavioral health issue, and 13% were unknown. So we can't really speak to those. So that leaves 67% of the individuals we used force on, we did not recognize a behavioral health issue. Call types associated with force events. So typically in the past, they've been with disturbances, domestic violences, or violence calls, and suspicious persons or vehicles. Last month was a little bit different, not necessarily with suspicious persons and vehicles. We had 12 uses of force with those types of calls. However, we did see a spike in uses of force as it related to aggravated assault and battery, and those were 9. And that's a little higher than the months previous. Still, our uses of force, the vast majority of uses of force that we get into are with empty hand control or empty hand techniques, and are, for the most part, level 2 uses of force. As far as the level 1 unit, we had total completed investigations were 16. The average days to completion was around 15. Minimum day was 9, and maximum day was to completion was 24. With our level 2s and 3s, we had 35 total completed investigations. The average day was around 84.3, which is still under the 90 days. That 90-day timeline is not going anywhere just because we're out of the settlement agreement. We're still sticking to that. Minimum days of completion was 67, which has been a lot lower than in times past, which is good. And maximum day would have been 117, but that's where we had gotten an extension request and signed by our superintendent. And we had 0 uses of force out of policy uses of force last month. Just to kind of give everybody a heads up, soon, I don't know how soon, I don't imagine it being next month, but maybe the month after, you will see a decrease in use of force, and that's by virtue of the fact that we are in the middle of writing some special orders that are not counting shows of force as a use of force. They were counted as uses of force under the settlement agreement, but we've taken a look at that, and we are calling them what they are, and it is a show of force. No force is used, it is a show of force. So that will change the process up a little bit. You'll see a decrease in uses of force, where you'll actually get a true number of when we actually put hands on somebody and there's some sort of injury. The process to review that show of force, we're looking at changing as well. Our level 1 team will no longer review uses of force, but that's not to say that, shows of force. That's not to say that those shows of force will not be reviewed and that it is not an accountability measure for shows of force, because those still have to be reasonable and necessary. We're just looking at that from a different perspective, and going to have an auditing piece in that, and they still will be reviewed by that officer's first line supervisor. So that's just something to kind of look to. If you see a sharp decrease in use of force, a lot of that is because we're no longer going to be counting a show of force as a use of force. Do you guys have any questions about that?
No, I think that's, from a data perspective, separating those out, I think is helpful, but that's my own opinion.
And data still will be kept on our shows of force.
Yeah.
So we will still have that data, like I said.
Will that data be in this report, just out of curiosity?
No, because this is a use of force report, right? And we want to be
I'm just
very,
a nerd. That's fine.
very distinct that a show of force is not a use of force. So.
Any questions for Commander Norris? Of course, I have to have one.
Sure.
So the behavioral health involved on page 5, thank you for breaking it out to no, yes, and unknown. I think that's very helpful.
Right.
And I don't know why this just popped into my head, and I'm open to having the conversation, is substances, right? So mind-altering substances or whatever, plus alcohol, does that factor into use of force cases or data points, right? Or are you kind of wrapping that into behavioral health involved?
No, we would actually look at that as different. When we're looking at behavioral health, we're probably looking at behavioral health, somebody who's diagnosed with not a mental health disorder, but a possible behavioral health disorder, right? There's a distinction between the two. And then there's, somebody who we feel is having a mental health episode. So those, unfortunately, a lot of the times that we get in a use of force with somebody who's experiencing a behavioral health episode or a mental health, there are substances on board. So it is hard to kind of distinguish what exactly is causing this person to behave in the way that they are. So it's really hard for us to kind of muddy through and pinpoint that, well, had they not been on narcotics, they wouldn't have acted this way. Well, hold on. They also are going through a mental health episode.
Right.
They just happen to have some chemicals on board. Does that answer your question?
No, but it does
Okay.
clarify.
Okay.
Because one of the things I was thinking about on the use of forces is, would it be advantageous to add use of forces on people, like breaking out who was on a substance versus not? And so that's one, or like yes, no, and unknown. Because then too, I think seeing that trend could be helpful. And again, this just is a thing that popped in my head. I'm willing to, let's leave it for now and think, but I just was thinking, breaking down, if they know that there was a substance involved,
Sure.
did that, just another data point, right?
Well, if you guys want to mull it over and then get back to me and we can see what we can do.
Sure. Yeah, I'm good with that. Yeah,
Okay.
I just thought about it, so I just wanted to bring that up, and even, I'd appreciate even your input too, to say if it would be a value add or not, right?
Well, I think the only way to say if it would be of value is to just probably let's look at it and see if it does add any value. If we're not seeing, if you're seeing, 95% of people that APD uses force on, they're drunk or they're high, right? It's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah,
Does that
that's
make
kind of what
sense?
I was like,
Yeah.
some sort of narcotic or alcohol substance,
Yeah, I think the
90%
only
of
way
the
to-
forces.
Yeah, I think the only way to see value in it is to
Okay.
actually maybe just do it and look at it and see if it actually provides you guys with any useful information or information that can be acted upon.
We can pilot it.
Yeah, let's try, if you can, if it's not too much of a lift, do it for the next one if possible, or 2 months from now, because who knows how long it will take. And then that way we can just look at it and see and just have it as a pilot to see if it shows any data that would be interesting to look at, right? And just question.
Let me get with Dr. Valier with data analytics.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that that's something that can be tracked because usually I want to say when we do what we refer to as our blue team entry with a use of force, that's a question that's asked. Don't quote me on that,
Yeah,
but I'll check.
yeah, cool.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Commander.
Commander Norris, I got one more question real quick. For that show of force, how we're gonna take it off being a level of force, you said there will be data tracked on it. Can we get a separate report on that one?
I'm sorry?
Can we get a separate report for that?
Are you asking me, do you, or are you asking for a separate
we?
report?
Yeah. And the reason why I say is because we do want to keep that metric at least in line, because if there's an abundance of use or show of forces, we got to, what is the premeditation to that? What's happening? What's going on? Is there anything we can do to hopefully help it, right?
Right. Let me see if Dr. Valier can
possible.
parse that out as well.
Thank you.
But let me tell you this, I'm not going to broach that topic with him yet until we get our process fully in order and operational.
Yeah.
So that's
Part of
going to
that
be,
process,
it's going to
yeah.
be a bit.
That's fine.
Does
As
that
long
make
as it's
sense?
part of that discussion,
Yeah.
to be able to report it out somehow, we would appreciate that if we could.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, next order of business is the report from ACS. Mr. Bustamante.
One of these days, I'm going to trip down those stairs. I can see it now. And it'll be a while because I won't retire, not in 3 weeks, and certainly not in the next 3 years. So plenty of opportunities. Hey, everybody. Glad to be here today. Thank you for having us again. At a high level, I'm going to go through some of our major updates. With the warm temperatures, as I've mentioned in the past, are seeing those calls increase. I just sent over our April report just recently. Our May one should be done soon, and we'll make sure to get that over. But they are jumping up as they typically do, typically aligned with the exact same call saturation we have outstanding throughout the year. Outside of that, we do have a couple, while I stay within the field division, exciting highlights happening. One, and I think I've mentioned it before, the Alvarado Transit Center. We have office space there. We also have the Southwest Public Safety Center coming live later this year. Really excited about that. We'll be sharing a facility with the police and fire departments way out there on the west side. And we also are currently developing some space on the west side as well to support kind of our general field operations as well. So you're seeing that spread out. Jumping from the field division to the violence intervention division, we do have a space on the northwest plot of the Gateway property. It is separate from the building itself. Its address is 5006 Gibson that we are now moved into. So if at any point folks would like to have a tour, we'd love to have you. We also will be doing a ribbon cutting and the rest at the appropriate time. We want to make sure we get art up on the walls and it looks nice, you know, all of that, before we invite folks in for big celebrations and the rest. From that, and touching again on the Violence Intervention Division, our Summer of Nonviolence has officially kicked off. Last week we had the kickoff at Mariposa Basin Park out there in the northwest area. Really successful. We were at about 330 folks attended, which we were pretty happy with for press conference. Hopefully the cornhole and the coffee helped sell it. And then just last night, we were at Balloon Fiesta Park for our first drive-in movie, which was Rogue One, and we had a total count of about 1,200 people who turned out. So really, really happy about that. We fed most of them. It was more than we were expecting, so we're kind of working through that. And the rest, it's the first one, so we're trying to see, but games, fun, all the rest, and it was pretty great. And it was safe. Both events were safe and really a great opportunity. The next one coming up will be in now 13 days. We'll have another drive-in movie at Balloon Fiesta Park. I forget what the next one is. I think the one after it is Greece, but I forget exactly what the next one is, but you'll see flyers soon, and we'll get all that pushed out on social media. One thing we really want to highlight is the Summer of Nonviolence that is maybe one of the newest pieces is we have a cohort of a handful of teenagers who are promoting it on social media, doing all of that from a series of schools here in the area, including some of our kids out at West Mesa. I'm really excited about that. They call themselves Generation Peace. They're great messengers. They're definitely a better messenger to teenagers than I am, including probably my own teenager. And it's been effective because we've seen, you know, a lot of even interaction with other kids who are showing up with them, which is pretty exciting. Final really comment I'd just like to highlight is we were privileged to be visited by Cambridge, Massachusetts over the past 2 days. They flew out because they wanted to hear kind of how ACS operates, what we do. We went over everything from contracts to field to violence intervention to even our partners up in the Emergency Communications Center, spent some time with them to talk about what dispatch looks like and our lessons learned and the rest. So they were really excited to just host them, and something that, you know, I think I've mentioned previously, but we do every so often. We've had Seattle here, Chicago, some representation from the Twin Cities up in Minnesota and the rest. And yeah, and final piece, I actually don't think we have anything on council at Monday, or at council on Monday, but we'll be there anyway, just in case. And looking forward to the summer continuing on, and happy to answer any questions.
Awesome, thank you, Mr. Bustamante. Any questions from, I think we got one.
I'd always assumed that winter was your busiest time for pickups, for people sleeping out rough. But do you have just as busy a time in the summer, in the warm weather?
Chairman Member Weimark, I'm not trying to be squirrely here. It's how you define busy. The winter transportation has been so effective that it has alleviated our responders' jobs. So I would say, as far as just overall volume and the responders having to go to calls, the summer is the busiest. If we didn't run the winter transportation, however, we would see probably similar jumps for that reason. So it's proven to be, especially for what we spend on it, incredibly effective.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Nope. No, any other questions? All right, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next order of business is the report from the city attorney.
Lindsay Roseborough sends her apologies. She had a very much last-minute situation that prevented her from being here at the meeting. She did pass along to me really the only thing that she had to report on formally was because this occurred after the last board meeting, is that the court-approved settlement agreement has been signed off on the judge as being complete as of May 12th. So there is no more CASA, you've kind of heard the other presenters mention, but, and I believe the board was sent that official orders already, but just for the announcement of the public, and that's the only thing Ms. Roseborough had to really report on was the inclusion of that process.
Wonderful. Thank you, Director McDermott. Next order of business is the report from City Council. Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. Chris Sylvan, Albuquerque City Council. The first thing I have to report, you must have mispronounced my name, I guess, because you're laughing. The first thing I have to report is the agency and the contract compliance officer and council, we all meet once a month together just to see where we're at and make sure we're all on the same page and everything. Those meetings have been great. But hopefully tomorrow we have a board member that we're going to interview doing that once a month thing, and I'm hoping he shows up, and I hope that we can pass him on to counselors and everything. So that's kind of the exciting news there. Next thing that happened at the May 19th meeting, we had our 25-158, and that was the establishing a pilot program to provide gas cards for police vehicles at the Northwest and Southwest area commands to improve operational efficiency and reduce response times. These titles get really long for these pieces of legislation. Long and short of it is the Northwest and Southwest area command, they have to cross the river to gas up their cars, or they have to go, well, they definitely have to cross the river, or they have to go to Pino Yards, which is across the river. So Councilor Sanchez sponsored a bill to hopefully the administration can set up a pilot program to let officers use gas cards instead of going to different facilities, taking time out of their shift. And then the last thing, I should have coordinated with Mr. Bustamante, because on the council meeting on June 2nd, there was R25-133, and this is approving an authorization for the filing of an attached grant for a Polhod Foundation grant, providing an appropriation to the Albuquerque Community Safety Department in fiscal year 2025. And what that means is, if you remember from Mr. Bustamante's report, he was talking about folks coming in and visiting and checking out ACS. Well, the Polhod Foundation, and I'm pronouncing that wrong, they're based in Minneapolis. They came and visited ACS, and they liked what they were doing, and they said, hey, you need to apply for one of our grants. And ACS did apply for their grant, and I believe they're going to receive it. So that's all I have for my report. I stand for questions. Oh, one more thing. We did report, our PIO and myself, Vince Higgins, we met at the Policy and Procedures Committee meeting, and we presented how we were going to try to collaborate and help to get more board members. So our PIO is going to help us as well. So one more quiver in our arrow to try to get more board members. And that's all my report.
Wonderful, thank you. Any questions from the board members? No? Awesome, thank you so much, I appreciate it. Next order of business is the report from CPC by Mr. Mensa.
Good evening, Honorable Chair, CPOA Board, employees of the city and officers and everyone watching at home. So nice to see you tonight. We've had a nice busy month. We started off going over the ordinance, not the ordinance, I should say, our council rules, which are made by us. And I've been talking to Diane about that, and we're going to set up a meeting with the entire council, whoever wants to attend, to go over this rules. And, you know, we've got some good feedback on that so far. We had 6 meetings this month, 1 canceled. We had Sheriff Kai Smith, May 12th, on the Foothills meeting, and he's the new sheriff of Bernalillo County Detention Center. He wants to make rounds. He actually told me he wants to come to every council every other month, so he's definitely a hardworking guy. I was a little surprised by that, but he's done 3 councils so far, and he's giving information on budgets and how many people are there and why they have that many people in the jail, how many employees, staffing, etc. So it's been very interesting. On the 13th, the next night, we had Crime Stoppers. And, you know, there's a lot of misinformation about Crime Stoppers. A couple of people in the audience thought they were a city agency. Did you know that Crime Stoppers, which is national, they actually started here in Albuquerque 50 years ago? So that's a feather in our cap. We got a few things. We've got Microsoft and we got Crime Stoppers, right? So we're getting there. On May 17th, we got Kai Smith again. And that was at the Southeast Council. On May 18th, I attended the Spruce Park Neighborhood Association up in Nob Hill there, and we're trying to get more memberships. We've been very slow for some reason. No one applies anymore. I used to get a couple a month. I haven't not gotten one in 4 months now. So getting out there and talking to neighborhood associations and groups about what we do. People were fairly familiar with it at Spruce Park. On May 20th, I attended the District 6 Coalition meeting. The chair is actually our Southeast chair. So we had a few people who were familiar with the community policing councils on that one. I attended Nob Hill Public Safety Echo on May 21st. That's Darryl LaLoche's program. He's actually trying to bring it back. There was a full room, and it was an interesting topic about de-escalation with the police department, so hopefully we can get these guys on soon. We canceled the Northwest meeting on the 21st. We just don't have the attendance right now, so we're trying to get something interesting going for this month. Valley was the 22nd. We had Dr. Nicole Duranzo of APD Behavioral Sciences. She is the one who works with the officers who were in some sort of problem or another, officer-involved shootings and also violence and that sort of thing. So that was an interesting presentation. May 22nd, we had the second youth CPC meeting, and I'll get back to that in a minute. That was online. May 31st, Council of Chairs. They came up with the idea to do radio advertising. So we're gonna go on 2 stations. We're working on that right now. We've done Byron Padrell Station 99.9 The Beat. We've also done television and online. So we're looking for new venues to reach people. Television, neither television nor click advertising worked so well the first time. Let's see. We had no topic in the Southwest on June 4th. It was a community discussion, which was very, very lively. June 5th in the university, Jay Ratliff, the commander of the Scientific Evidence Division, better known as the Crime Labs, addressed us. And there was good information there as well. Let's see, I did touch a truck last Saturday. That is the District 9 Coalition event set up by Renee Grout. And they have all the trucks from all the city departments there. Kids like to see that one, so we gave out some information there. On June 10th, a couple of days ago, Joseph Vire, the commander of the APD Academy, stopped by to talk to the Northeast. Coming up, we've got a actual tour of the Scientific Evidence Division or Department or Crime Lab on 625. If anyone wants to go, let me know. I'm a little interested in that. And we've got some other good stuff planned as well. Main thing I'm excited about is radio advertising. We've got to get those ads. We're going to have an ad on the movies, supposedly, on the movies for Summer of Nonviolence, supposedly, if Byron can get that done. And we're trying to move, so it's going to be a good deal. I stand for questions.
Any questions from the board members?
Kelly,
Yes.
I understand you're also working with the CPOA to recruit new board members. Is that correct?
Well, sort of, yeah, that's part of my new job title. We haven't, you know, actually, we've got, I sent the application to a couple of CPC members who thought said they were interested. no one filled it out as far as I know. So ex-CPC members and current CPC members, I sent it out to 3 people, knowing that we've had that chair empty for far too long. But at this point, it hasn't happened.
And there's no interest in CPC people being interested in policy?
A lot of them are barely interested in CPC at this point. So, you know, there's been a lot of apathy, and you know, I have made the announcement. We'll see. I should send it out again, though. It would be a good idea to have somebody who's got some experience up here. So.
Kelly, do you guys send press releases to local news outlets here?
Yeah. I mean, not every time, but we've gotten covered once.
Okay. Knowing the news cycle, you know, we're all used to a 24-hour news cycle, but however, there are times when local stations are really just looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
I know from experience working on Sunday morning, trying to put together a newscast on various radio stations, you're just going through your files. So, you know, it's the timing of when you send them. So if you guys are cognizant of it, I was just curious, you know, hitting them like on a Thursday is a good idea, because that's when the weekend guys are going to start looking.
Okay. Well, you know, we don't have any weekend meetings. That's the thing. We have.
Not for the meeting, but just to make them aware that there is an upcoming meeting.
Okay.
It might be advantageous for you to hit the weekend people because they're the ones that are looking for a story of any kind.
Okay, that's a good idea. I will start sending those out. I've sent the agendas out. We got coverage once at the Southwest, and it was a little issue at that meeting. But generally speaking, we haven't had that interest so far. But you know, we do know they're looking for stuff.
I recall that the Foothills used to get a really good turnout. Are they still getting a good turnout?
Not particularly, no. Midsummer is always the slowest time. Midsummer and winter. Then fall and spring, we go up a little bit. But there seems to be more apathy now than there has been in the past. So we're trying to look for something exciting that's going to hook people.
I have a random thought here, and I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I thought, what if we did like, or not we, but maybe go try to find a local podcaster to do a sit down with you, Mr. Mensah, and just kind of talk about what the CPC is all about, or even, you know, going to Ed's, you know, radio show or something like that, just to start getting it out a little bit more. Because I think if you read it or just to advertise it, everyone's going to go, oh, okay. But if it's somebody's listening, watching, whatever, that might be a different way to communicate, because we all know I love to read, and I'm a very audio listener and learner, and that's what I would rather do. So I think, you know, going on a radio show, TV, whatever, podcast might be a different avenue than I think we've tried before. So an idea.
Well, one of our members actually invited me on what's supposedly one of the most popular podcasts. We're supposed to set that up, a guy from the Northeast. And, you know, yeah, we're going to try that. I've been on Byron Station 4 or 5 times. I've done the morning shows for 4 and 13 once each. So, you know, it's there, but I don't know. There doesn't seem to be a magic bullet at this point.
There's no magic bullet. I think it's just grinding.
Right.
I know. Member Calderon?
Have we considered combining the CPCs? Since there is a lack of participants in certain sections of the city, have you thought about combining them into one?
Just doing one meeting a month? Well, that'd be an interesting idea. I think the local effect is what draws people, though. This was happening on the other day on San Pedro and, you know, Comanche. You know, yes, he's the area commander. Okay, I'll send some guys out there tomorrow. That's probably been the main draw of the CPC at this point.
Yeah.
You get to talk to the local commander.
I mean, and the reason why I say that is just because of lack of participation.
Mhm.
I mean, it wouldn't mean that we couldn't have those commanders still attend, right? At that point, all the commanders would attend,
Right.
and, or, you know, we schedule them, however we go about it, right? Just something to think about, right? Just because of that lack of participation that you're having, and the struggle to recruit people, because like you said, it's just,
It could be a good
It's hard.
event, though.
yeah. Because even we struggle, I mean, Chris can talk to this, to, you know, get a board member even on our board, right?
What,
And so-
what was that?
I said, we even struggle to get a board member on our board.
Yeah.
You know, and we have, you know, council services actually working on it hardcore. And so that makes it even.
Yeah,
another
like I
option.
said, applications have just dried up. I
Yeah.
have no idea why. Just all of a sudden stopped. I even sent one to myself to make sure it was still working.
Valid.
Yeah,
I don't blame you.
I mean, another thought is instead of just one, what about breaking it up into quadrants, right?
I mean, they technically are.
I mean, those are area commands, but versus just pure quadrants. I don't know, just, again, thoughts, just ways of doing things, yeah.
Right.
Again, all this comes back to no magic bullet, it's just a grind.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we had one meeting a month, make my job easier, but, I don't know if that would work so much because people would forget about it even more than they do now. It's like, I don't know, we got to experiment and try something different. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but keep the ideas coming.
Yeah.
Perhaps a combined meeting every other month.
A combined meeting of everyone.
Well, have all the CPCs together alternate months.
Well, I could bring it up with the council chair, see what they say. Ultimately, that's going to be their decision anyway. So, I mean, and then it's not written in the ordinance that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be something. We only have to do 2 meetings a year per council, but,
Executive Director McDermott.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, so, and Mr. Mensah already kind of mentioned it, so if you were talking about that, it would change the structure entirely, so that would require a complete rewrite of the ordinance and everything, not to say that it can't be done, but they could have some joint meetings just as like one-offs, but they still need to have the structure that's laid out in the ordinance. So.
Right.
No, that's helpful, thank you. Cool. Any other questions from? Awesome, thank you, Mr. Mensah, I appreciate it.
all right, thank you.
All right, next order of business is the report from the mayor's office, Mr. Small. He is not here. Next order of business is the CPOA report from Executive Director McDermott.
Thank you, Chair. So the CPOA received 69 complaint intakes from May 1st to May 31st of 2025. 26 of those were assigned for investigation. Those are between the CPOA and then some that may already be either with or appropriately for IAPS or IFD. 27 were driving complaints that were resolved with the employee supervisor. 3 were assigned for mediation. That's a new category. We'll talk about that a little bit later in presentation. And then 13 were miscellaneous, where again, either insufficient information, it was determined APD personnel were not involved in the complaint, or it was resolved to the citizen's satisfaction. There were 2 commendations that were received. I had already mentioned this in the legal report, but basically at the last meeting, it was discussed that we're going to be significant developments regarding the code-approved settlement agreement. So on May 12th, as I already said, the judge ordered the termination of the CASA. Just as a statement from us, the DOJ intervention did bring critical reforms for the department, and APD and CPOA have been involved in this DOJ agreement since 2014. Now that it has concluded, we are committed to maintaining the improvements gained, but there will also probably be some streamlined improvements. You kind of heard some of those things from Commander Norris that may be coming down the pipe, but this will tie in nicely with the work that the board and the agency will be doing regarding some potential recommended ordinance changes and revisions. So those are all things to look forward to as the work that we do here. We have not received any further update from the APOA regarding the MOU, but the chief at a meeting that we had just recently said that he would also be discussing it with the union since it does benefit processes within the department. So maybe we'll hopefully get to push that to the finish line. We'll see. Staffing update for us. We do have 2 new investigators that were offered the remaining investigator positions. One of those will be starting next week, and then the other will be starting basically next month. We did conduct interviews for our policy analyst positions, which Ms. Selch had left, and we're just awaiting HR confirmation for the person to be approved for hire. And then we are evaluating candidates for the remaining open positions of senior investigator and senior admin assistant. So we're getting closer to being fully staffed. And we did, as I mentioned, we started sending some cases for mediation, and we had a meeting with the APD's chief of staff to work with him on the mentorship resources as discussed in the ordinance and the overall messaging for the department so that personnel understand the program and its benefits. And we'll be obviously next in the agenda after we talk about the non-concurrence, giving you a brief overview of the mediation. So, Stan, for any questions on that part?
Any questions? Nope, no questions. So with that, we can move on. The next order of business is the CPC 323-24 non-concurrence.
So yes, the board did receive the non-concurrence memo, and in careful review of this memo, so basically the issue at hand is SOP 116A1c, and that is all department personnel, whether on or off duty, shall act in a manner that is above reproach. This includes avoiding behavior that impairs the department's efficient and effective operation. So this non-concurrence came about in a little more unusual way than most. It came about due to statements being made during the officer's pre-disciplinary hearing. A pre-disciplinary hearing is when the officer has the opportunity to discuss the proposed discipline and provide any additional information for the Office of Superintendents to consider about mitigating aggravating factors before they make final decisions on what discipline to impose, if any. During this PDH process, the APOA representative pointed out that essential remarks, sorry, let me go back a little bit, to our point, it's a little confusing for us. The memo had stated in the major's opinion that accurate documentation is essential for department operation. So with that being said, then I'll go on to this. So during this PDH process, the APOA representative pointed out that essential remarks section of the citation, which is what this is all about, there was some remarks that were made in the citation, is a reminder to the officer that while they're basically acting as the prosecutor in court, and that any comment in that section is pretty much optional. And that may be true. However, our concern is that if you have an inaccurate statement in that section of the citation, that the officer then may be providing obviously inaccurate information during that court process. So that's the one concern that was raised that doesn't quite match up with what we're thinking. Also, during the course of the investigation, the investigator gave the officer the opportunity to clarify whether what was written was an impression based on the discussion with the complainant or some kind of a direct statement from the complainant. The complainant and the OBRD confirmed that it was not a direct statement. In our opinion, the non-concurrence did not consider or at least recall that the officer had specifically said that if I wrote it, it was a quote, it was a direct statement. So that established the non-concurrence, but doesn't make sense again, like I said. During the PDH, the officer agreed that he did misspeak and during the interview because he had not adequately prepared for the interview. It is a responsibility, obviously, of every employee to be prepared for the interviews and have whatever they need to contribute to that interview. To our opinion, the PDH process is not the time for officers to modify their statements in direct contradiction from the investigation to what they may say there. So to our consideration, again, it should be more of maybe a factor in terms of mitigation, but not to where it would shift. So in our opinion, if accurate documentation is to be considered essential to department operation, then inaccurate documentation, even if utilized as a reminder, is affecting the operation. So as you saw in the memo, the major had said didn't seem like it matched. He didn't think it was either right SOP or didn't feel like there was enough evidence. We respectfully disagree with that. So That's a report.
Thank you, Executive Director McDermott. Any questions from board members? No? All right, then let's move on to the next little order of business here is the mediation program.
So yes, as we've said now that we finally have a new mediation program for the CPOA. And for the audience, mediation is an alternative to existing methods for handling police complaints. The mediation program facilitates impartial and independent mediation sessions between civilian complainants and law enforcement officers. Complainants have the opportunity to address their complaints directly with the involved officers in a neutral setting with the assistance of a mediator. In accordance with the Oversight Ordinance, the mediation shall serve as the principal mechanism for addressing particular community police complaints, and the mediation program promotes constructive dialogue, enhances community police relations, and allows CPOA's investigative staff to concentrate on different, more significant perhaps, allegations. So there's three parts of the ordinance that kind of highlight about mediation. I won't go into all the quotes and details, but basically the first being is that it does say mediation first whenever possible, and as further described in later sections, mediation should be the first option. The later emphasis says mediators should be independent of the CPOA, APD, and the city, and should not be former officers or employees of APD. And at the discretion of the director, an impartial system of mediation should be considered appropriate for certain complaints. If all parties involved reach an agreement, no investigation will occur. It talks about in there good faith, that both parties, participate willingly, openly, having that dialogue. The APD and CPOA should coordinate a mediation program that allows the civilian complaints and officers the opportunity to communicate directly regarding the disputes and reach their own solutions. And then, as I mentioned earlier, APD should ensure officers have mentorship resources available in advance of mediation to explain the process. So that is, again, what I mentioned earlier. We're working with a bigger program that sounds like we jumped the gun in terms of sending some to mediation, and to a degree that's a little true, but we also needed to kind of get the program and figure out some of the kinks. So these are like trial run ones. So far, we have gotten one result back, which is indicative that this is looking like it's going to be on a good pathway, because the mediator and the citizen basically discussed, and the citizen was fine with actually just providing information in the department and didn't feel the need to actually sit down with the officer. So those are different outcomes that may come of this. And so the program, just so that you understand, is we looked at different options. So CPOA has tried mediation a few different times throughout the course, especially of the CASA, but even prior to that. And the biggest hurdle that it seems like has always been the problem is mediators that are maybe not accustomed to the types of complaints or types of complainants that come through our office. And so Deputy Director Abbasi had done actually quite a bit of research and figured out this particular mediation team, and I did send the board the resumes of those individuals. We met them actually, or I should say he found them through NACOL. So again, they are experienced with law enforcement type complaints, law enforcement type complainants of things that, those types of issues. They have a pretty extensive history of working with these types of issues, concerns, groups, communities, concerns. So it was a good fit, so it seems. Obviously, it's an early trial run, but it does seem like it's working well. We had signed that contract on May 1st, so it hasn't been obviously very long. Again, pilot for the moment, till we get some of that big ramp up, those resources, the mentorship, things like that. Basically, the contract delineates a scope of services. Just to kind of give the overview is that, the contractor evaluates the complaints after I've kind of already deemed that it's probably an appropriate type of complaint. They schedule the sessions. They conduct them in accordance with New Mexico mediation procedures. They provide the training. Again, this discussion that we had with the chief of staff, you know, we were talking about ways to make sure that the officers understand about the program mentorship. And then following the session, they provide a survey, they provide an outcome, and that's a big piece that some of the previous attempts at mediation, we weren't getting the good responses, or we weren't getting any response sometimes about what the outcome was. So this contractor understands that, you know, we need to have not the details, but just it occurred, here's the gist of, you know, the outcome, again, not details. So, and then the private sessions, they've agreed to do sessions between the complainant and the officer first, just to kind of get those issues, which may result in sometimes not even needing to meet. They just, you know, do, what do they call it? Asynchronous mediation may occur as well. So, just briefly, again, I'll go over eligibility criteria. Some of the basic types of complaints will be like communication, perceived rudeness, traffic accident type disagreement of report, minor issues there, where the complainant actually requests it, as long as it's not an excluded category, and a general, just less severe nature, typically as we call by sanction level 6s, 7s, that sort of thing. Things that are not going to be eligible for mediation, at least at this point, is anything that involves a physical injury as a direct result of an officer's action, allegations about use of force, allegations of specific bias like derogatory slurs or things like that. We do get folks who just say a generic, so it's something that's a little more specific than just the generic of bias. And it usually is going to focus on like marginalized populations when we understand those biases. Cases that pertain to any civil or criminal actions between the involved parties, and then just anything else that just doesn't seem like it's going to be appropriate for mediation based on when I review it. Officer eligibility is going to be those that participated in mediation with the past 6 months within a similar allegation, they would be ineligible. That may have an exception, again, depends, but for the most part, we're not going to allow officers just keep mediating a similar problem is the issue. An existing relationship, again, between the parties that would create some kind of conflict of interest, and then a similar allegation, misconduct that was actually sustained within the last year. So those are some basics. And that's just a super quick overview of the program. We're very excited, and it's going to be, I think, a big benefit for community members, for officers, and certainly just the practical of workload for the agency.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, Director McDermott. One question I did have is with these mediations, are they in-person video conference or like phone calls or all of the above?
So they can be different options, but right now we're mostly having a Zoom process. So the mediators, they are mostly based out of state. They have worked in state here as well, but the Zoom is probably the most likely option that it's going to happen. And if a community member, just for the awareness of the public, if a community member doesn't have the resources for a Zoom or something like that, we will be having a space in our offices available for them to come and participate private from any of us, but able to utilize it so that a lack of resources wouldn't be a prohibitor.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions from board members? Awesome, thank you very much for that presentation. That is very helpful because I've been wondering about that myself. So, next order of business is the serious use of force cases. We do not have, this is a standing item, we do not have any this evening. So then the next order of business is officer-involved shooting cases. We have 4 today, and then the first one up is APD case 23-00926 by member Budanaro.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. This case had quite a few moving parts, and I'll try to keep it as succinct as possible. Case number 23-0092462 occurred November 16th, 2023 at approximately 15:28 hours, located at the 198th Street. The events of this case actually began October 30th, 2023, with the intelligence unit receiving an email regarding a report of a burglary of a storage unit where a silver Toyota Tacoma with titles, keys, turned out to be 11 firearms and rounds of ammunition had been taken. The case was forwarded to the auto theft unit on November 2nd. The Toyota was located. Rather than attempting to recover the vehicle, surveillance was conducted to build a case for the vehicle theft and recover the stolen firearms and ammunition. During the surveillance, an opportunity presented itself to place a tracker on the stolen vehicle. Officer 2 was able to approach undetected, and the tracker was secured. By November 13th, Officer 4 took a picture of the individual in the stolen truck and compared them with still photos from the businesses where the vehicle had been tracked, and were able to identify a suspect as ER. On November 16th, the auto theft unit made the decision to execute a plan to locate the stolen truck and get Mr. ER into custody. Air support was requested and available at that point. The plan consisted of a traffic stop being conducted with a marked patrol vehicle. As the vehicle had been stolen with keys and title, there was a possibility that Mr. ER had unknowingly purchased the stolen vehicle. It was thought that if Mr. ER fled the traffic stop, that would develop a reasonable suspicion that he knew the vehicle was stolen, at which point air support would be used to follow the vehicle. The auto theft unit, using the tracker, would conduct an out-of-sight follow and surveillance until the vehicle came to a stop. Once the vehicle stopped, then Mr. ER would be contacted. The traffic stop resulted in Mr. ER fleeing from officers near the El Mesquite Market, or behind the El Mesquite Market. Mr. ER ran into the alley behind that location. Officer 2, wearing a vest with police markings and a badge, exited the vehicle, identified himself as a police officer, and ordered the subject to the ground. Mr. ER continued running. As officers arrived at the scene, Officer 5 ran up with a 40-millimeter launcher and warned to get on the ground. There was no compliance, and it was told he would be 40'd. Officer 5 ran up to Officer 2's position, announced 40, 40, 40. Mr. ER was hit in the leg, thigh area with a 40 round. He still continued running, heading north in the alley and moving forward. Mr. ER slowed and turned slightly so officers were able to identify the threat and discharge weapons. To summarize, in total, there were 5 officers involved in this, including air support. The findings, the overview, there were no concerns or deficiencies with the level use of force. The following was discharge. Officer 1 and 2, OSI handgun, each 7 rounds, which were in policy, they found. Officer 3, IOS handgun, 6 rounds, which was in policy. Officer 4 was fired 4 rounds, which was found to be in policy. The Officer 5, the 40-millimeter deployment, was also in policy. That was a level 2, level 1 show of force, all within policy for each officer. There were no tactical concerns addressed, except for the 40-millimeter concern was addressed that referenced picking up equipment from the ground. There was no deficiencies in training policy, no deficiencies or concerns were identified. I only had one question for the commander. Commander, my only question was, why was the decision made? And I understand, TAC plans take time to come together. I understand that warrants take, a certain amount of time, things like that. But can you help me understand, why was this executed early morning? Why wasn't it executed early morning, say, when the person was at home, or possibly, potentially less populous sort of area? Because it seemed like that could have gone the wrong way.
Are you saying the arrest warrant?
Well, the arrest, why wasn't it executed sooner? That started October 30th, ended November 16th.
Right.
It seemed there was a lot of time that could have been executed without the public even being close to any kind of.
Well, the investigation started on the 30th when the warrant was signed, and then they be able to identify the individual, build a case, and get the warrant signed is when they started looking for the individual, which took several days to locate him. They were able to find a vehicle that they were familiar with that he drove, that they put a tracker on. He would switch vehicles often. They had multiple surveillance points around the city at multiple locations where they were actually able to go ahead and locate him and then start to follow him and try to devise a plan on trying to take him into custody in a safe space. Once this individual saw that Air One or noticed basically that officers were following him, he ditched the car that he was in that did not have the tracker. When I say ditched, he fled the car and then started taking off down towards the alley where they decided to go ahead and challenge him and confront him and try to get him into custody. So a lot of that has to do with, we have a warrant for somebody, but we have to locate him. And we also have to find, he was somewhat of a transient individual. And what I mean by that is he would go from house to house to house, couldn't set up with enough time to actually pin him down and barricade him in a house before he would go mobile again.
Oh, okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Budenauer. Any other questions from the board members? Well, Member Weimark, while you think I have my own question here. To Commander Norris, I did have kind of a weird question, obviously. So Officer number 2's OBRD footage was kind of, he was kind of the first one kind of running up on the suspect.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of shows at some point Officer 2 is shouting commands to stop, right? Running up with his firearm drawn. The suspect is walking away and becomes basically within like the officer becomes within arm's distance of this individual. So my question, kind of watching it, I kind of go, you know, and this is maybe too much TV. Let me be very clear. Going, why don't you just tackle the guy or quickly holster your firearm, draw out the EDW, and then deploy that because he's still within 5 feet.
Sure.
Right. I mean, that's kind of what I saw, and I went, let me at least ask, right? Because then otherwise, you know, everyone else kind of came up with the 40. Then they were taking too much time. I just was, if that Officer 2 decided to take the action, or even, you know, and I get running up with the firearm drawn because this individual was known to have a firearm. Is that right?
Yeah, and proved to have one when we got in the shooting.
So
we don't
yeah,
want to
right, and then
get in a
proved
fist fight with
to
somebody
do
with a
it.
firearm. Yeah, so we actually asked that particular question.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Actually, and the officer responded that when he turned and looked at me, it was a look that I had not seen before, and it made me pause because I didn't know exactly what he had. So I decided to create some distance, and then eventually, the subject ends up pulling out a firearm. We end up shooting him. So we did ask that question.
Okay. No, as long as I'm not totally bonkers with that, because I just went. But yeah, I can see that look of, you know, and not there, can't fully see it, to go, oh yeah, let's not try to go hand to hand or get too much closer right now. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's all the questions I have. Member?
I didn't have a question.
Oh, I thought you had a question. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Commander. So let me now pull up my thing to read. Did I not? I always put the thing in my thing. I didn't copy and paste what I need to. Sorry, anything from the Executive Director McDermott, anything from the CPOA?
Yes, Chair, Honorable Board. Just a couple of things that we observed during our review of this officer-involved shooting. There was a discussion point that was raised during the Force Review Board, where it was noted that there was no coordination with other entities like State Police, BCSO, established regarding the surveillance operation, even though the vehicle remained listed as stolen in the NCIC. This was raised as a potential operational risk, as other agencies could have conducted a felony stop during those 14 days when the surveillance operation was going on, compromising the operation. And the other thing that we found in the investigation was that Mr. Arhi was struck 8 times from those 24 rounds that were fired. He survived the initial incident. However, he died approximately 7 months Later, the available evidence does not conclusively state whether he died as a result of the injuries that were sustained during this encounter. One last thing I want to note, there was a training referral that was generated for the acting sergeant concerning utilization of resources and keeping command and control of the situation or the scene. And our review revealed that the investigative material does not identify whether the training referral was completed in this case. So, yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Director Balsi. Are there any other questions or any policy-related input that we'd want to make policy recommendations to? All right. We already answered that one. And then I make a motion to agree with the findings of the Internal Affairs Force Division investigation for, I'm not going to pull up the right one, for APD case 23-0092642. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Weimar. Ms. Berlin, may I get a roll call vote, please?
Member Bouillonitz?
Affirmed.
Member Budenora?
Affirmed.
Member Calderon?
Affirmed.
Member Weimar?
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. The next case is APD case 23-0098642, presented by Member Calderon.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. My case number is going to be APD case number 23-0098642. Incident occurred on December 7th of 2023 at 16:07 hours. The use of forces that were used was in sequence. Level 3, officer number 1, rifle discharge × 3. Officer number 2, rifle discharge × 3. Officer number 3, rifle discharge × 2. Level 2 use of forces was officer number 4, 40 millimeter hit ×1. Officer number 5, 40 millimeter miss ×2. Officer number 5, 40 millimeter hit ×1. Level forces were officer number 6, a show of force with a rifle ×1. Officer number 7, show of force 40 millimeter ×2. Officer number 2, show of force rifle ×5. Summary of the event. The incident stems from an ongoing robbery investigation that began on November 20th of 2023. Detectives with ISU and GVSU identified the suspect MC as a primary suspect involved in multiple armed robberies and an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon at a mosque. A warrant for MC's arrest had been issued, and he was known for using a white Kia Optima. On December 7th of 2023, MC was observed at an apartment complex. In an effort to safely apprehend him, detectives developed a tactical plan that included using distance and cover from a second-story apartment floor, an apartment, blocking the white Kia to prevent escape, and issuing PA announcements that included surrender instructions and use of force warnings. MC ignored these repeated announcements, and he was seen looking out the window multiple times. He then fled by jumping from the second-story window onto a rooftop below of a maintenance shed, and then to the ground, disappearing momentarily from the officer's view. MC reappeared near maintenance at the bottom of the maintenance room, placing his hand on his waistband, raising officers' concerns about potential presence of a weapon. Detectives gave verbal commands to get on the ground, but MC refused to comply with and fled westbound. An officer deployed a 40 millimeter round but missed. As the foot pursuit continued, MC tripped on a sidewalk and fell. Officers again issued commands, but MC got up and fled again with his hand near his waistband. Another 40 millimeter round was deployed and missed. He was described as actively resisting and non-compliant throughout the encounter. Officers continued to deploy less lethal 40 millimeter rounds as MC moved through the complex, one of which struck him in the buttocks and another in the lower back. Despite these impacts, MC continued to resist, occasionally stopping and then fleeing again. While still fleeing, MC turned the upper half of his body back towards the pursuing detectives and pointed a firearm at them. This was perceived as a lethal threat, and in response, several detectives discharged the firearms, with one firing 3 rounds, another firing twice, and a third firing 3 times. Following the shooting, officers rendered aid to MC until EMS arrived. MC was transported to University of New Mexico Hospital, where he later succumbed to his injuries. No officers were injured during this incident. The Internal Affairs Force Division conducted a comprehensive review and all uses of force during this incident were determined to be in policy, including the less lethal 40mm impact rounds, and the later use of lethal force was found to be reasonable, minimal, and necessary. Medical aid was provided at the scene and during transport. No officers were injured. Sadly, MC was unresponsive at the time of the end of the incident, and then he had no prior uses of force to this incident. Policy discrepancies. There were policy violations of set operating procedures that were identified, and IAR was created. There was no violations for personnel rules or regulations, administrative instructions. One of the investigators identified a possible violation. An internal first investigation was initiated, and the case is still an active case. A mandatory training request, MTR, was generated for detectives due to him attempting to discharge his 40mm multi-launcher, but did not discharge the safety lever, or disengage, excuse me, the safety lever. A detective was requested to try different things with the OBRD camera, such as positioning it in a different place to avoid accidental stoppage of his OBRD. Tactics, policy, and supervision had no deficiencies or concerns identified. Training, yes, and equipment, yes, as identified prior. That's it.
Thank you, Member Calderon. Deputy Director Abbasi, do you have anything to add to the summary?
Yes, Chair, Honorable Board. The CPOA conducted a comprehensive review of all the evidence and the investigative material related to this case. As Member Calderon stated, it involves the attempted apprehension of Mr. C, who was under surveillance as a suspect, in connection with multiple violent felony offenses over the period of approximately 2.5 weeks. Officers in this case had a lawful objective to take Mr. C into custody. During the attempted apprehension, Mr. C fled from officers, failed to comply with their commands, did not respond to less lethal measures that were employed during the encounter. While being pursued on foot, Mr. C pointed a firearm at the officers. This action constituted an imminent threat. An officer responded with the use of deadly force in this case. The CPOA review also identified concerns related to the response strategy by the Investigative Services Unit detectives and the Gun Violence Reduction Unit detectives. He was located inside a residence, and the operational approach assumed that he would voluntarily exit with his hand raised. That did not occur. The IAFD investigation did not examine why tactical support unit was not requested or deployed. During the operation, the agency notes that the absence of the tactical resources in a situation involving a potentially armed and dangerous suspect presented significant risk. There were other potential policy violations Member Calderon identified that were identified during the course of force investigations, and all of those concerns were appropriately handled by the department. The use of force was determined to be within policy based on the threat at the time. The CPOA finds that the overall management of the incident could have benefited from a more structured tactical approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Commander Norris, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Just a question to those findings. What would be the suggestion on the most tactical approach? What would be the suggestion on how that could have been handled more tactically?
Deputy Director.
An idea, a thought?
Yes, Chair, Commander, we observed during these reviews that if an individual is inside a residence and the department is aware that they're armed, then tactical unit is called out. In this case, we observed that the investigative services unit were short-staffed, so they called for assistance from gun violence reduction unit detectives. We believe that the tactical SWAT unit may have been more appropriated in this situation, but if the commander believes otherwise, we're open to hear why the unit was not called out.
I think that the dynamics of this is the plan was to go ahead and barricade this subject, which means we're going to go ahead and make it a tactical activation. when the subject decided to pop out the window quicker than we could get the set perimeter and call out tactical, then we have to respond to that. But in cases like this, I would say probably 9.9 times out of 10, when we do have the time to go ahead and make it a tactical activation, because there are several steps that we have to take when we barricade somebody before we can make it a tactical activation to actually secure that. Those were becoming in place. This subject decided to go ahead, pop out of the window, and then run. So that was a thought, that was the plan, but it became very fluid very quickly, and that subject took off, so we had to obviously address the issue right then and there.
Awesome, thank you. No, I appreciate that conversation, that was very helpful. Board members, any questions for? I gotta, unfortunately, I gotta ask. I think it was Detective 1 or Officer 1 in the video, again, when the individual tripped, and even with some of the 40s, I get the distance. I was surprised that this individual took two 40 millimeter rounds and kept up and
That's very common.
Okay, and so that was the question, was the commonality of that, and was the fact that the decision was to keep distance even when that individual stumbled, because I thought somebody else was close enough to not try to go hands-on or even have a, taser deployment? Is that because they want to keep the distance? Is that?
Well, yeah, at that time, and it can cut kind of both ways, because when we present this to FRB, there are questions that are asked that are very similar, and it's one of two things. Either you can run up and get in a fight with the guy, and somebody would say, well, you induced a gunfight, and what are you doing closing the distance on somebody who you know to be armed and dangerous? And then you have the other argument to that going, we're going to hold our distance, make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row, and if we get in a foot chase with this person, we get in a foot chase with them, we feel that we have enough people to set up a perimeter and try to contain him. So it's really a tactical decision on the officer. We, at times, have to take all the totality of circumstances into question. Well, at all times we have to, not at times, at all times, and we have to consider who we're dealing with, the level of threat that this person is, and is it the wisest, safest thing to run up and immediately tackle somebody who we know to have a violent history. That's something that we consider in all of these cases. And in this case, that was a question that was never asked because it was obvious to IAFD relative to this person's history that this is somebody that we're going to not close the distance on and try to control the interaction from a distance if we can. It also speaks to our de-escalation policy.
Okay, yeah, you're talking about his history, but then also too, and I could be looking at the wrong one, is that there was also no other cases that this individual has a use of force against. So that's kind of where I'm.
Right, so we don't necessarily consider somebody to have a propensity of violence because they don't have a use of force against officers. We look at their criminal history. And this person was, I believe, had several convictions for armed robberies with a firearm. One thing that may have been left out of the documentation that you have is when this subject was running from officers, one of the officers said, I thought I saw him pull a gun out and charge it.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that was not.
We wouldn't necessarily want to be tackling somebody in a situation.
Oh, yeah, that's what I think I was missing, because that whole time too, when I was watching, no one said in the report that, they saw or he had a firearm, just, yeah, we think he does, like, he's known to.
Right, and if you think somebody does and he's known to, we're not going to be tackling somebody like that.
Yeah. Nope, just questions I wanted to ask, just because I saw it and I want what ifs, right? I mean, we have hindsight, so 2020.
No, I understand.
Cool. Any other questions? No. Okay, so let me go do fun stuff now. Any potential policy recommendations we can make? Question to the board. All right. Then with that, then I make a motion to. Oh, there it is. I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Agent, the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and it upholds the finding of APD's Internal Affairs Force Investigation for APD case 23-0098642. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Calderon. Ms. Brilliant, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Member Bolianitz.
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro.
Affirmed.
Member Calderon.
Affirmed.
Member Weimark.
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Brilliant. And then, so, not next, but the next order of business is we're going to take a dinner break. So with that, do I have to take a motion on that one? I make a motion to go to break. May I get a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Member Calderon. Ms. Barilla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Member Bolianitz.
Approved.
Member Calderon.
Approved.
Member Budenaro.
Approved.
Member Weimark.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. All right, we'll go on break. All right, welcome back. I make a motion to come back from break. May I get a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Member Colderon. Ms. Spurlock, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Member Bolianet?
Approved.
Member Budenaro?
Approved.
Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Weimer?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Spurlock. Next order of business is APD case 23-010-5287, presented by Member Weimark.
Date of incident 12/30/23, time 2017 hours. Location 7817 Central Avenue, Northeast Adams Market. Involved individual SP. Involved officers, Officer 1, 2, 3. Other officers, Officer 4, Officer 5, Officer 6, Officer 7, Sergeant, Officer 8. IFD findings. Officer number 1, firearm discharge ×2 in policy. Officer number 2, firearm discharge in policy. Level 1. Officer number 1, show of force, firearm. Officer number 2, show of force, firearm. On December 30th, 2023 at 2017 hours, APD dispatch received notification from an automated license plate reader, ALPR, that a stolen vehicle with an NM license plate drove through the intersection of Louisiana and Central. Radio transmissions, along with the officers' interviews, indicated that the vehicle stopped and parked at Adams Market. Officers made the decision to conduct a felony stop at the parking lot as the vehicle was idle. They stopped briefly near the intersection of Dallas and Chico and set up a force array composed of lethal and less lethal weapon options. They then approached the vehicle to conduct the stop. Officer 4 engaged his emergency equipment, pulled in behind the vehicle, and put his vehicle in park. SB reversed the stolen vehicle, causing a collision with Officer 4's unit. SB ignored officers' verbal commands, opened the driver's side door, and pointed a black handgun at Officer 4 and fired 2 shots. Officer 4 sustained wounds to both his hands. This caused him to drop his handgun while falling to the ground. Believing that SP would kill him if he stayed, he stood up and retreated to the back of his unit. Officer 2, believing that Officer 4 had been killed, came around to Officer 4's position, where he observed SP exit the vehicle facing him. He gave SP verbal commands and fired 1 round at him. SP simultaneously fired 2 rounds in Officer 2's direction. Meanwhile, Officer 1 observed that SP had exited the vehicle, as SP had a gun in his hand when he ran towards multiple bystanders. Officer 1 believed SP was posing an imminent threat to the bystanders. As SP continued to run, Officer 1 fired 2 rounds, striking him in the right forearm and the right knee area. Following the gunshots, Officer 3 and Officer 1 pointed their handguns at SP and issued verbal commands. Once being taken into custody, SP was compliant. Injuries sustained. Officer 4 had gunshot wounds to his left index finger and right ring finger. SP had gunshots to his right forearm and right leg. SP was charged with federal arrest warrant for possession of a firearm and ammunition by a convicted felon and possession of a firearm in furtherance of drug trafficking. No other use of force incidents were located involving him. Misconduct. No violations for personnel rules and regulations or administrative instructions were identified, but some were for standard operating procedures. SOP 2527, duty to provide medical attention and transportation following any reportable use of force that is not a show of force. And once the scene is secure, department personnel shall render aid consistent with officer training. Deficiencies and concerns. Tactics. The officer did not clear the vehicle from behind cover. Behind the officer was an officer who had his handcuffs in his left hand and handgun in his right hand. Training. The officer perceived he was sure of his backdrop being a stucco wall when he fired at SP. Forensic evidence showed that he fired his handgun when SP crossed the storefront windows, and one of his rounds ricocheted off the steel window frame. Equipment. Officer, forgot his number, had a computer on his lap which fell to the ground when he was exiting the vehicle. This is listed as a deficiency due to an officer riding as a passenger in the vehicle. It would have benefited him to secure the computer. Fourth summary. Firearm Discharge Officer 2, Level 3 in policy. Firearm Discharge Officer 1, Level 3 in policy. Show of force Firearm Officer 1, Level 1 in policy. Show of force Firearm Officer 2, Level 1 in policy. That's all I have.
Thank you, Member Warmark. Deputy Director Abbasi, does the CPOA have anything to add?
Yes, Chair, Honorable Board, we conducted a comprehensive review of all the materials of this case, which included all investigative materials, OBRD footage, dispatch recording, police reports, crime scene photos, and all relevant SOPs. As Member Weimark stated, the incident involved an individual who was identified as operating a stolen vehicle. A traffic stop was initiated outside Adams Market on Central in Pennsylvania. During the encounter, Mr. P, the involved individual, he fired shot toward the officers, which injured one officer, and then he attempted to flee on foot. The officers had a lawful objective to eliminate the imminent threat this individual posed to both officers as well as members of the public in the vicinity. An officer discharged his weapon in response to the threat posed by Mr. P. Based on the preponderance of the evidence and the totality of circumstances, the use of force by officer in this case was minimal, reasonable, and necessary. Some tactical and equipment deficiencies were identified by force investigation, and they were all handled appropriately by the department. The CPOA agrees with the IAFD findings in this case, which determines that all uses and shows of force were within policy.
Thank you, Deputy Director Abbasi. Commander Norris, does APD have anything to add?
No. No, sir, not at this time.
No question?
Yes.
I have a question. It said Officer 3 did a show of force, but it's only Officers 1 and 2 in the summation.
Okay.
Well, a statement, I guess.
Right.
Not so much a question.
Sure. Okay. Noted.
No questions? I had kind of two questions. Well, one observation, and then the second one's a question. The first observation was under the deficiencies and concerns, the training. I do like that you guys call that out to for that officer to say, hey, just always remember, know your target, what's beyond it, right? Just helpful. So I do appreciate that you guys kind of called that out as a training opportunity. And then for the potential policy violation, the medical attention, can you provide a little more context as to that potential aspect to it, or?
Sure. The officer who was tending to him had a tourniquet on him. He was mistaken and basically made a comment saying that, well, that tourniquet's only for officers. No, it's not. It's for anybody who's bleeding.
Okay.
So he had the opportunity to render aid via tourniquet, didn't take that opportunity, so we had to address that.
Cool. All right. Yep. No. Agreed. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah. No other questions. I just saw that and I just was like, okay, let me question out that one. So, great. Yeah. Any other? All right. Let me do that. Any potential policy recommendations from the board members? All right. With that, then I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the finding of APD's Internal Affairs Force Investigation, Affairs Force Division investigation for APD case 23-010-5287. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Budenauer. Ms. Burrell, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Member Bolianis?
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro?
Affirmed.
Member Calderon?
Affirmed.
Member Weimar?
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. The next case on the docket here is APD case 24-0006-800, presented by myself. This incident occurred January 25th, 2024 at about 2:30 in the morning. Officers 1 and 2 were dispatched after 911 called reporting of a male, Mr. B, breaking windows and brandishing a handgun at the Loveless gas station. The RTCC utilized live camera footage to track Mr. B. He was observed attempting to hit vehicles and then pointing, possibly firing his weapon at a semi-truck, and apparently tried to attempt to hijack it. This information was being relayed to officers. Officers did coordinate a meeting spot to develop an approach plan and arrange a force array. RTCC then advised officers that Mr. B was running back towards the Loveless gas station and appearing to fire shots at the building. As officers arrived at the location, they heard a single gunshot coming from the gas station and immediately moved in that direction. The responding officers at the time and private security guards had already confronted Mr. B after giving him commands to drop the gun. A security guard fired his handgun once at Mr. B. The officers were flagged down and then informed Mr. B was still on 6th Street. Officer 2 located Mr. B, ordered him to drop the gun, and presented his rifle. Simultaneously, Officer 1 identified himself as police, to which Mr. B responded aggressively. Officer 1 then knelt and pointed his rifle. Mr. B pointed his gun at the officers and advanced toward them. As Officer 1 moved backwards, he stopped and fired his rifle twice at Mr. B. Officer 2 also pointed the rifle at Mr. B during this time. Mr. B fell and his weapon landed near him. Officers maintained rifle control over Mr. B and communicated with him until they felt safe to approach. That is quick. Force was used. Officer 1, level 2, officers 1 and 2 pointed their rifle. There were 3 instances of that, and then critical firearms discharge of a rifle, Officer 1, 2, and those were considered level 3. This individual's behavior after he was taken into custody. Mr. B was cooperative after he was taken into custody. Medical was provided to this individual. Officers were not injured, but Mr. B had a bullet wound in his abdomen and his lower back. Mr. B was under investigation for aggravated assault and battery with a deadly weapon, vandalism, and carjacking. No other uses of force no other history of use of force was for Mr. B. Training concerns were identified. The RTCC supervisor, Mr. R, reviewed the dispatch and responded and responses to the providing officers. The RTCC operator, Miss R, was suggested that her tone was perceived by the officers to be elevated and stressed while calling out information. There was potential policy investigations that were being investigated by IAFD, and those were around SOP 2-52-5-B-3-B. With that, Deputy Director Abbasi, does the CPOA have anything that they want to add for the overview?
Yes, thank you, Chair, Honorable Board. This incident involved Mr. B, who, while armed with a handgun, threatened multiple individuals at the gas station, attempted several carjackings, and pointed the firearm directly at the responding officers. Officers had a lawful objective to respond to the immediate threat posed to the public, and themselves. Deadly force was used, and Mr. B was struck with 2 rounds. The presentation that was provided to the board did not clearly suggest that Mr. B, in this case, he died as a result of this incident. However, the investigative report that you all reviewed did clearly provide that information. The CPOA agrees with the IAFT determination in finding the force application minimal, reasonable, and necessary to overcome the threat that was posed by Mr. B in this incident. The investigation also identified potential misconduct concerning the feasibility of giving force warning, and it was determined that officer complied with the policy, and the CPOA agrees with the determination made there. I would also like to note that from our observation in 3 of the 4 cases that were reviewed today and other officer-involved shootings that were reviewed previously, the data indicate a clear pattern. When an individual is armed with a firearm, brandish a firearm, or hold an object in a manner that is reasonably perceived as a firearm in presence of officers, the probability of an officer employing deadly force increases significantly. We share this information to inform and promote community members' understanding of how rapidly risk escalates when any weapon is involved in certain situations. And it is solely for community education, and it is not intended to blame any involved individual in these cases. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Commander Norris, do you have anything to add?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. Any questions from the board members? Cool. All right. Any policy recommendations? All right. Then with that, and surprisingly, I don't even have a question. I make a motion that the Civilian Police Oversight Advisory Board affirms and upholds the finding of APD's Internal Affairs Force Division investigation for APD case 24-000-6800. May I get a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Member Calderon. Ms. Brillo, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Member Bouillonitz?
Affirmed.
Member Budenaro?
Affirmed.
Member Calderon?
Affirmed.
Member Weimark?
Affirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. And thank you, Commander Norris. Now we're
Thank you. See y'all next month.
Sounds
Bye,
good.
sir.
All right. Next order of business is appeals, which is a standing item. We do not have any appeals for this month, so we will move on to the reports from the CPOAB subcommittees. First up is the Policy and Procedure Review Subcommittee, presented by Member Calderon.
I'm the chair of the committee. How about that? Anyways, thank you, Chair. We had a meeting on June 5th of 2025 at 3 p.m. at the Plaza del Sol hearing room on the basement floor. We'll be discussing those policies that we recommended that policies be brought to the full board. Our next meeting will be July 3rd, 2025 at 3 p.m. And that's all I have for this.
Thank you, Member Calderon. Any questions from the board member? Next order of business is the report from the Ad Hoc Audit Committee presented by myself. So we did have our first meeting around the audit, or for the Ad Hoc Audit with Member Budenaro and myself on the 13th of May, just to kind of talk about how we want to do the audit. We came up with a little process. I will be honest and say I haven't done that little bit yet of the audit. I don't know if Member Budenaro has had a chance to do the audit either yet, but our goal is to try to get this done and being able to give a report on the next subcommittee from the audit findings. As far as the next meeting, it is TBD just because it is an ad hoc committee. So it's probably going to be within 6-ish months, but we do not have a date yet. Any questions from the board members?
Chair Bouillonitz, the only thing I'd say is if you had any discussion about the tool that you're going to be using for the audit, the agency did provide a checklist to the ad hoc to determine if that's a useful tool or if there's going to be something modified to that. That would be the only thing, if there's anything.
Yeah, I haven't, speaking for myself around with the tool and the audit, I have yet to get down into that to even use the tool. So far, it looks good, but until I actually complete the audit, and I'm not going to speak for Member Budinaro, he can speak for himself on that. It looks good, but until we actually do it, I don't necessarily have any feedback on the tool yet.
So I think what I'd just say for the purpose, for the two board members that are not on that, I'll just give the overview of the topics, basically. And we had it broken down into intake and initial review, investigative steps, conclusions and findings, internal review and quality control, case closure and communication, and additional observations. So these are the overall topics, and in each of those topics, there's basically elements to look for in each of those categories. So if the other members had any suggestions or anything, but that's the plan, unless the ad hoc chooses to go something differently.
Awesome. Thank you, Executive Director. All right. With that, let's move on to the next order of business. Discussion and possible action, APD policy, and going around the recommendations. And so with this, I'll move it over to Deputy Director of Policy.
So yes, the subcommittee, as Member Calderon had mentioned, had met. We did provide the board with some of the recommendations for the policy of 1-1. One possible recommendation that was raised was for 113C 23, which is basically a definition of insubordination. The recommendation that was discussed was providing possibly either a kind of a total rewrite of the definition to something that was a little more comprehensive, some possible language being intentional refusal to obey a lawful and reasonable order from a supervisor or disrespectful conduct that undermines supervisory authority. This excludes good faith clarification requests, refusal of unlawful orders, and proper use of complaint procedures. That is born out of at least some discussion with IAPS that they have received IARs or investigation requests from the chain that are not really insubordination issues. So there seems to be some lack of clarity among members of the department that they're submitting requests when those requests really are not that topic. So we thought that a enhancement to the definition might be beneficial in that. Another alternative to, if they didn't want to do a total rewrite, was adding some sort of language at the end to help limit those, such as reasonable differences of opinion do not rise to insubordination. So these are the two options. If the board is interested, I don't know if you want to go through all three of the possible recommendations before you decide, or if you want to kind of discuss each one individually.
I'm up. So is it?
I recommend that we do each one individually.
Okay.
For the record, for Ms. Barela, it's clear and concise. So for each recommendation you go through, we do
Okay.
each one.
So, okay, so for the recommendation for SOP 1-1, and that recommendation is.
Let me do it for you.
Yes, please. You seem to understand it better than I do because my brain does not work that way.
So the recommendation for 1-1-3-C, parentheses 2-3, is that they either rewrite the whole definition, or if they're going to not complete rewrite it, they add some language into it discussing the reasonable difference of opinion does not rise to insubordination, define what insubordination is. Right now, it's so vague. That's the recommendation for that one.
Do you make a motion?
So
Because is that what you were saying? Is you want to do a motion for each one?
we do. I'll just explain it for you so what it is. And so when we do the motion, just make sure you list out the right verbiage right there.
Yeah.
So that it's concise for Ms. Barela.
All right, so then I make a motion that we approve the recommendation for policy for policy SOP 1-1, personal code of conduct, subsection 1-1-3-C, quotes 2-3. May I get a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Member Calderon. Ms. Barela, can I get a roll call vote?
Member Bouillon, it's
Approved.
Member Budenaro?
Approved.
Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Weimark?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Brilla. So going on to, we're in the same policy, but the recommendation for 1-1-5-A-5.
Yes, the purpose of this is, so the department as well as the CPOA have had occasions when individual officers may be making comments in a, for lack of a better description, like venting fashion or some kind of unprofessional comment. And it's not in the earshot at the time of the individual, but it is clearly on OBRD. And so the department as well as us have determined that that rises to the level of a policy violation because it can obviously be heard by the individual once they make an inspection of public records request and can speak to just the overall attitude. So in order to maybe raise awareness and to sort of combat the argument of, well, I didn't say it to their face, which is what we've heard in some of the PDHs, pre-disciplinary hearings, is to raise that awareness of putting additional language in this policy, something to the effect of including when outside the presence of the hearing of a person, or regardless of whether that person is present, something to that effect to, and we could leave the specifics to the department. We would provide these couple of suggestions, but just to convey the message that you are accountable for the things that you say, even if somebody is not hearing it right then during the course of a call. Obviously, we understand the realities of venting and things like that, but there's a time and a place, and when you're on the call, it isn't. So.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, I was about to ask.
Yeah, to that point, right, the time and place for certain situations and ensure that, because officers have been gotten in trouble for this and there've been complaints about it. So the officers are aware that, it is policy that, ensure that you're aware of your surroundings and who you're around, what you're saying, when you're saying it, all that fun stuff. Just like any other profession, say things at the wrong time, at the wrong place, it can get you hemmed up, and that's what happens. And so this is just to make sure it's clear, there's clarification within the policy, and as well just it sets that tone and that standard, right?
Right, yeah, because even kind of talking through this, I'm nodding my head going, well, yeah, I mean, all that OBRD footage is iterable, which means anyone can get it, and then they are being recorded through that whole thing. So even if they are not in front of that individual at that moment, that individual can then get that, and then, yeah. So, yeah, it's just something to be aware of, that they are constantly being recorded. And so everything that they say is recorded. So this is a helpful reminder to the officers and to the public too, that they are being recorded both auditorially and visually. So it's something to keep in mind. So yeah, I like that. Any other comments from the board? All right. Then I make a motion that we approve the recommendation for SOP-1 or SOP 1-1 personal code of conduct 1-1-5-A-5. Can I get a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Member Calderon. Ms. Brilla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Member Bouillonitz?
Approved.
Member Budenaro?
Approved.
Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Weimark?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Brilla. Next recommendation is still for SOP 1-1 personal code of conduct 1-1-6-A-3 (a). Executive Director McDermott.
So this wasn't really not so much of a recommendation as more of a question. I don't know that I would say that we necessarily have to put it through as a recommendation, but what we found odd was that in that section, it's a subsection that specifically calls out APOA as needing to be truthful as opposed to all. So it just seemed strange to us. There may be a reason. We did have an intention to try and ask that question prior to this meeting of the policy owner and didn't have an opportunity to do so. So, there is a little bit of time still on this. I don't know that it's necessarily a recommendation that needs to be put forth. It was more of a question of why the specific call out.
Yeah, and I agree with that. If we haven't been able to ask that policy owner, I would probably just hold off on that, so until you guys can get an answer back from that policy owner, just so we have a little more background, right? Because I don't want to shove it through without having the proper, I don't know.
Context.
Yeah, context behind it, all that stuff. So if the board's okay with that, would we mind holding off on pushing this one specifically for recommendation, hold off on it for now until we can get more word from the policy owner to determine what that context is? Because my point on it was like, why is the APOA called out specifically compared to the CPOA? Any other agency that can come in and ask them questions, or if they're being interrogated for anything else, why is the APOA called out specifically?
Yeah, that's
and the policy doesn't say anything about it, so it's just very why status.
Yeah, then I agree that we're not going to do anything until we hear back. Right. Cool. Since that is the decision, no vote is needed. So, Ms. Barlow, do we need to get, if we're not going to take any action, do we need to get a roll call vote? Okay, cool. I'm seeing no shaking heads. I just want to confirm. All right, so then we'll move on to the next. Anything to specific? I see talking from the legal, and so I assume something needs to be done. Okay, so let's move on to the next SOP 2-47, crashes involving department-issued vehicles. Executive Director McDermott.
So the issue here is the department utilizes the public service aides and the transit safety officers in an increasingly larger capacity. And 247-4A1E, it is the opinion of the agency. We were discussing this at the subcommittee. We've had some conversations with risk management that given the amount of liability that could be for this type of investigation, that the PSAs and TSOs should not be investigating crashes involving department personnel. Again, it raises issues of liability if they're not performed correctly. The PSAs by their nature and TSOs are basically subordinate to sworn officers. So if you have a sworn officer that's involved in an accident and now you're sending a subordinate employee to investigate that creates some possible conflicts. Investigating those issues. So the policy also is in conflict with 2-46, which is response to traffic crashes. That policy lays out as an example some very specific like Metro Traffic Division and things, how to do it. So our issue is that basically there should be an exclusion for PSAs and TSOs to not be taking these department-issued vehicle type crash investigations. So that's our recommendation, to put that in as a caveat that they're not the ones doing those.
Thank you, Executive Director McDermott. Member Calderon, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so we supported this because in the policy they had that the Metro Traffic Division took care of like city-owned vehicles. So the difference between department-owned and city-owned, obviously they're all owned by the city, but departments, of course, is just APD specific. But then like any other department within the city gets investigated by Metro Traffic Division. So the distinction between there, why for one? And so making this consistent would be, simplistic in that aspect. But as well, PSAs, TSOs do not receive the same training that these Metro Traffic Division sworn officers get either for traffic investigations. And so we believe this will help with ensuring consistency, but as well that these investigations are conducted appropriately, because I know risk management is probably having a field day with this because of the inconsistencies. And in the end, it's to ensure that is done, but as well, that's where we're at with it right now, at least.
No, I agree. Any comments, questions from other board members? All right. Then with that, I make a motion that we approve the recommendation for policy number SOP 2-47, crashes involving department-issued vehicles. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Budinaro. Ms. Berlick, may I get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, but member, Mr. Chairman, if you want to specifically just call out the exact number of the
Sure.
policy?
Yeah, okay, so then it is SOP 2-47, crashes involving department-issued vehicles, subsection 2-47-4- capital A -1 lowercase e. Can I get a roll call vote?
Thank you. Member Bolianitz?
Approved.
Member Budenaro?
Approved.
Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Whitmer?
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Brilla. Moving on to the next SOP, and that is SOP 2-71, formerly 2-17, search and seizures without a warrant. Executive Director McDermott.
Yes, and I will just make special note that because the deadline was actually today, we did have to go ahead and submit these. If the board has any concern or additional things, we will make an amendment to it, but due to the deadline, we had to submit them. What we did submit is for a general recommendation to address the problem of license plates again being seized, particularly by PSAs. Having non-sworn personnel confiscating license plates raises issues of proper authority and safety for the personnel. So the recommendation again is to not have PSAs and TSOs confiscating, seizing, or removing license plates from vehicles. Those that encounter registration violations or problematic license plate and shall document the issue and call a sworn officer for appropriate action. Again, it sets up a safety issue. If you have a PSA, which we have had a few complaints and issues that have occurred with this, they are actually touching the car and actually removing the license plate. And obviously if a citizen sees that at home or wherever they are, they may very well react angrily and negatively, and the PSAs are not equipped to deal with that. So we're concerned that that sets a safety issue for one, and then, you know, just the overall legality of seizing property when you're not a sworn officer.
And so my biggest premise and our biggest premise, mine and Rowan's, was that, so the scenario that we were given, not scenario, but it was actually a complaint, was that the car was in the public street and, you know, PSA confiscated the license plate, obviously in the public street, that's within its realms. The thing is, it's outside of the house. So they saw on their camera they weren't home. But my fear is that if that PSA does it and that person that's at home takes that as stealing their property, doesn't care who you are, and comes out guns a-blazing, that's a safety issue for that PSA, because that PSA cannot defend themselves in that aspect whatsoever. And so I'd rather be a full sworn police officer that can react appropriately and deal with the situation at hand. And so my biggest thing was the safety portion. Of course, the part that the CPOA did about the legality and all that, that's of course, that's context within it, but the biggest part for me is safety. Because my fear is that PSA gets threatened with a gun or gets shot at or something significant and they can't do anything about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, I mean, safety, right? I mean, license plate, fine, safety.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. You know how people are. I mean, we look at our freaking road rage incidents off of simple, stupid stuff.
What?
Yeah, right. And you can imagine on something more significant like that. So
Yeah, for sure, especially when touching the vehicle.
yeah.
No, I agree. That's a good idea. Any other comments? Okay. And since this has already been submitted, we do not need to vote on it.
The other recommendation as part of this was 271 4G1D, and the issue being they had made a modification of, it used to say may, then they changed it to can. The topic that's being discussed there, though, is about exigent circumstances and an automobile exception. So our recommendation was to turn that can into a shall, because if you are going to exercise exigent circumstances as your excuse for why you're doing something, you have to be able to articulate that, as opposed to being more permissive. So it was just a simple, well, maybe not simple, but it is a word change, that it's a non-discretionary issue. So it says the officer shall articulate exigent circumstances requiring action to prevent immediate loss or destruction of evidence, if that's actually being used.
And I guess like can, shall, may,
Yeah.
you know, the nuances of that. And, you know, if you're doing something for a search and seizure, you're doing it because of, you know, exigent circumstances, you have to have a reason for it and you be able to articulate it. It's not a you may or you can, it's a you will, because that protects, obviously, that protects the officer, but protects the civilian as well, in the event that they maybe sues anybody or anything like that. You know, you have the reason, the documentation there. And so I think I agree with the CPO and their recommendation on being able to recommend that we change that back to shall.
I agree with the shall, and my only 2 cents is then it's got to be, like, it does no good if we say shall and an officer who's going to execute that OBRD is not on, right? If their OBRD is on and then they articulate while on camera, then at least it's recorded. Otherwise, who are they doing it to, or is that not specified in the policy?
OBRD policy does cover those kinds of circumstances. That would be considered a mandatory recording event, so.
Cool. Yeah, and that was just a one clarification, though. I just wanted to call out, because otherwise we're just saying it to say it. Yeah. Cool. Any questions, comments, the board members? All right, and then with that, since it has already been submitted, we do not need to take a vote. And then the last one.
So the final item is 271 4F. Again, this is a little more involved. We had an extensive conversation here about this. Basically, there's been some new language added to this policy that is reflective of some recent court case information. And the language that's in the policy is correct from the court cases. Where it is a little problematic in terms of how it was in the policy is there's a lot of nuance that's in the court case that isn't reflected, obviously, in the policy. And if you just read the policy and don't know any of the context, then it would appear to be in conflict. Now, we assume and hope that the training does help clarify that for the officers, but again, the way it's written in the policy does seem to have some setups of conflicts because it talks about in one area, closed containers being able to be searched, and then in another area it says closed containers can't be searched. So it's just confusing the way it is in the policy. So our recommendation, because legal is going to be involved and has been involved supposedly, is just basically raising the concern of, has the department adequately considered how this actually is enacted versus how it's worded, and that the training is comprehensive enough to reflect those differences so that officers understand, and just making sure that the language doesn't have that inherent conflict, at least in the policy. So it's not really a recommendation of anything specific to change. It's more of a, hey, just make sure you've considered this from all of these angles, just as a FYI, because we see a potential problem with how it's currently reflected in the policy. So that's what we submitted. So these 3 items, as I already said, we did have to submit. Since it is on the agenda, perhaps you want to say that you're just okay with the fact that we did that in the motion. But
yeah, I'm good with that. Anything to add?
No, she summarized exactly how we felt about it. It's just a matter of ensuring, this is brand new to the policy, we want to ensure that it's clear for officers to, the distinction of, the circumstances within it, and that the training is able to help make it easier for them to understand that the legal jargon behind it is very legalese, right?
It's legalese, and then also complying with the 4th.
Right.
Right, yeah.
And so we just want to ensure that they're looking at that, and as the CPOA stated, just to ensure that they've brought it up a couple times, and this is, of course, a formality of it as bringing up as well. That's it.
Cool. Any other comments, questions? All right. So with the recommendation from Executive Director McDermott, even though we're not taking any actions, so officially the board does agree with them that they have submitted this on our behalf for the record for SOP 2-71, formerly 2-17, search and seizures without a warrant, specifically calling out the overall recommendations for license plate confiscation, as well as subsection 2-71-4-G-1-D, and 2-71-4-F. Can I get a second?
Seconded.
Ms. Barilla, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Member Bolianitz.
Approved.
Member Budenaro.
Approved.
Member Calderon.
Approved.
Member Weimar.
Approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Barilla. So the next order of business are policies with no recommendations, but do we want to call out specifically that there were 3 others that have the gun back program, or 71 due date 6/19, but had no recommendations. So this is where I'm.
So the no recommendation ones will be listed in concurrence with all each other. So you'll list them all there. So like the 1-1, you start listing them, right?
Right, but there isn't there. Hence my confusion. Because they're listed no recommendations, but no, this.
Deputy Director Abbasi, on the handout for the policy, he's referencing SOP 2-73, the collection, submission, and disposition of evidence and property, and how there was a discussion that I'm trying to remember myself now. I didn't do my
So
notes.
I can provide some clarity.
Thank you.
So yes, in the handout that you have from Analyst Reamer, there are 2 policies that they are technically listed in the no recommendations area, but you have in your handout some discussion. So they're not really things, again, that's a recommendation. Probably could have moved it in the other section, but anyway. 273, didn't catch it at the time when I was reviewing the agenda. 273 is more just letting, again, that policy owner know, because I think 273 and 271 are different policy owners. So just because they're interrelated, though, advising 273 policy owner of the same concerns that were raised on 271. So again, it's not a policy recommendation for that policy, but it's more of a just be aware that these cross over and connect. So that's kind of where it's in the non-recommendation, but you have a comment there. So that's the resolution or the explanation for 273. I don't know if you want me to address the other one or if you want to get down to that line and then address it. I'm not sure how you want to do it. But.
Since it's on my form here, I do want to just address SOP-2-113, custom notification buyback program. And then it's not a recommendation, but a discussion.
Yeah,
Right.
so the issue being is, so there's no recommendation that we have for 2113. So that's why it's again in the no recommendation. However, it came to the awareness in that discussion of looking at these policies that there actually is not a policy that we could locate for the regular buyback program that APD is at least a part of. The 2113 is very specific about that gun buyback process, but APD participates and we think, spearheads or runs, but we're not 100% sure on that. That's why, it would be more of a research thing to the department that there is no regular buyback program as to how and how much, but there is yet a news story that has, regularly cycled when these occur. So our thought was, in the context of this particular SOP, we may send just sort of that question as a response of, why don't you have a normal buyback SOP? But it's not truly a recommendation for this specific policy.
Okay. Cool. So just for the record here, so for policies, SOP 2-73, collection, submission, and disposition of evidence of property, as well as SOP 2-113, custom notification buyback program. There is no recommendations, but there is that guidance back to APD to say, here's something to look at. So there's no action to be taken. Just wanted to have that for the record. Cool. All right. Yes.
Can we create a section on the report that we create?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Can we create a section on that report that has just like maybe we should create a separate section just for these specific items? So we have like the recommendations, no recommendations, and we have maybe like a discussion one in there maybe, just so it separates it for the board members.
Just discussion with APD.
Yeah, or discussion or notification or awareness or FYI, something like that, just so it clears it up for the other board members. 'Cause yeah, we had a plethora of discussion on this, right, to ensure, but but me and Rowan understand it to a point. Obviously, I forgot it. That's why thank you for helping me. But just to make it a little more clear for the future ones. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Me as a humble board member also appreciates that. So, and all the hard work you guys do on the policies, because I could not. So with that, there is no recommendation for, and I'm going to list these policies out because they're fun. SOP 1-10 Peer Support Program, SOP 1-50 Gun Violence Reduction Unit, SOP 1-61 Internal Affairs Force Division, SOP 1-91 Tactical Emergency Medical Support, SOP 1-94 formerly 6-1 Training Division, SOP 2-4 Use of respirators, SOP 2-14 Use of Cell Site Stimulator Technology, SOP 2-25 formerly 1-28 Bomb Threat and Bomb Emergencies, SOP 2-37 Meal Breaks, SOP 2-60 Preliminary and Follow-up Criminal Investigations, SOP 2-73 Collection, Submission, and Disposition of Evidence and Property, SOP 2-76 Court, SOP 2-108 Electronic Communication Privacy Act Procedures, SOP 2-113 Custom Notification Gun Buyback Program, SOP 3-25 Bid Processes, SOP 3-34 Training Committee. With that, we'll move on to the next order of business, APD response to policy recommendations, which we do not have.
Yes, Chair, Honorable Board. We received response for 3 SOPs during this period. First was on SOP 1-46 concerning the field training and evaluation program. The board recommended adding a provision in the very last section, 146-6, and that APD responded that the sanction level of 6 was applied to that section. The second SOP that we received the response for was concerning SOP 2-78, domestic abuse investigations. We recommended a change in a definition section. The policy was overdue. The APD agrees with the context. APD agrees with our recommendation, and they said that they will change the verbiage. However, because we were late on the submission, they recommended that they will incorporate that suggestion into the next round when the policy comes under review.
Just want to clarify in terms of the late part is because it was after the hours thing. So that's why we're having to kind of jump ahead on a couple of these on occasions when the meeting falls on the same day as the policy is due. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that for the record is that it was late for that.
And the last response we received for the board recommendation was on SOP 1-92, the Special Weapons and Tactics SWAT unit. They agree with few grammatical error recommendations that we suggested. There was a concern that was raised in one of the officer-involved shooting that was reviewed last month, in which we recommended changing some of the operations of the tactical unit to clear the air when the suspect as well as both officers' safety is under risk. The department said that they do not agree with that recommendation, and those are taught and practiced through trainings. So they did not concur with that one. And yeah, that was it. It was 3 recommendations, 3 SOPs.
Thank you, sir. So with especially the last one, 1-92, it's kind of like that pick the battle or the hill you want to die on, right? we recommended the portion about the communication, but they said it's part of the training. I just don't have enough information, enough knowledge to say it's not part of the training, right? And so at that time, our recommendation from the board was just, it's not the hill I want to die on right now. And that's where we're at with it.
Can I make a suggestion that we bring Sergeant Solis?
Other business?
No, this is actually in regards to this. Or would it not be to discuss this policy and the feedback? Because I have a question about the training, if that's the case, right? Mm-hmm. So can we get Sergeant Solis to come down and maybe speak to the specific training in regards to the UAV or SUAS trainings or whatever you guys might do for communication?
For SWAT.
For SWAT, sorry.
What is the question again?
So for the UAV, is it the UASs? Is that what they called? Mm-hmm. UASs or UAVs, I like to call them. Unmanned air systems. We were saying that, for communication, to try to put something into the policy around communication with fellow officers, depending upon the SWAT engagement call out. Do you know anything about the training about communication between officers during the SWAT trainings?
As well with the question, can you show him a copy of what we're reading real quick so he understands what we're looking at? Oh, poor guy, he's just blind over there on the thing.
He should be blind.
I just want to make sure he's aware of what we're talking about.
Yeah. No.
It is my understanding that they can. Pretty much any officer can at any time say the 10 code 10.3, which is secure the air, and the air will be secure.
Okay.
I don't understand your question.
But there's no training on when to do it or anything like that. It's just, I guess because I think you're over training, so that's where I'm not sure the training that they receive, and so that's where it's like, should we call out in policy or is it substantial in training? And since we don't know what the training is being involved, that's kind of where we're stuck between policy recommendations or relying on training. And maybe you might have an opinion on that might be helpful to the board here.
And I can provide, just for your benefit, a little more of the context. The issue is, as you just said, any officer can call 10.3, but the issue being that, so we understood in at least in this one incident, that the officers should not break the air. And the circumstance was that if they had, it could have potentially provided a benefit to the officers on the ground, knowing a risk or a lack of a risk that was in the situation. So what we understood was that those officers would not, that's what they explained, is that we would not break the air, we would not break that 10.3 to convey that information. So that was kind of to give a little more context of what this was coming from, was would there not be a better enhancement in the policy to explain when a drone operator saw a risk that they could go ahead and break that silence. That's where we're getting at. As they said in training, that's all talked about, but I think that's the question, is that training, how explicit or not is that training?
I wouldn't say that it's that specific or that explicit to the, we'll call them drone operators. But as far as securing the air, it's going to be more specific to how the officer feels at the time. In other words, is a lot of times the way we train is, if I'm an officer and I have some information, right? But I'm not there dealing with the individual or individuals that could be a threat. If I'm not there, I'm gonna let those officers, I'm gonna give the air, we give the air to those officers, meaning they're the ones that have control of the radio the most, if that makes sense. So that could be where the the comment from the operator at that time for that incident could be like, yeah, we're looking at the incident, but we're not there. The officers on the ground need the air.
Yeah,
So it's more of the information is relayed when there's a break on, we call it break on the action, meaning, okay, they're not that high of a risk, if that makes sense.
Right, I guess.
Because,
Oh,
sorry.
No, please.
A way to see it would be if, let's say, these 3 members would be officers, right? They have a better view with the naked eye as to any threats that could be coming up. To where if we are seeing it from a camera, we're only seeing one angle of things. So the air is always, there's a, what's the word I'm looking for? The priority is for the officers on the ground at the incident, as far as priority for the air.
Absolutely, okay. Yeah, I guess this is kind of solidifying that maybe we do want to push back and not say, do it, break, take over the air, because like if someone has a clear line of sight, like a drone operator has a clear line of sight of an object in somebody's hand that in no way, shape, or in no way was a firearm, that they need to communicate that to the officers on the ground. Right, and so I think that's where I'd maybe want to push back to say, yeah, rely on training, but at least maybe put some guidance of when to interrupt or when to input as a policy overview. Not just verbatim. I don't know. Or am I completely off base here? Am I off base? Okay. You're probably not wrong. It is getting late. You're still not. Got to go green.
I think there's enough, I think there needs to be greater clarification, so that there is no ambiguity in the language. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Member Calderon, or please, if anyone else has something, please jump in. I'm looking for an open dialogue here to go. Am I even going down the right rabbit hole?
So I mean, the recommendation was made based on, at least some observation of a case or two, right? But then at the same time, generally the department isn't going to change policy on a case or two. It was proposed so that they could take a look at it. Obviously, we received the rejection. I can see both sides. Obviously, a drone operator might be in a better position to relay information that the ground officer is not able to see, but at the same time, if a drone operator makes a mistake or can't see it as clearly and then they convey something, that could be also detrimental. So it kind of can cut both ways. In terms of the training, I guess, let's put it this way, before you would, in my opinion, before you would push maybe to the chief to respond to this, maybe you would want to request more information about the training to know how well it is covered or not covered. We've caught, Sergeant Solis sort of off guard, so he gave you the information he can right off the top, but and then the SWAT is going to be a little different than the average academy training too.
Mm-hmm.
So, my recommendation is maybe board would want to take up a little more research before taking the step of having a response sent to the chief, which would be your next, natural step if you're wanting to push back basically into the response, is if you want it to be changed, you would send the memo to the chief would decide to change or not change,
Yeah.
and provide the explanation why. But it may be that, both CPOA and CPOA-B don't have quite enough information to want to go to that next step and maybe, you know, again, it's a board decision on that, but.
Yeah, the only thing I see about it, a big question would be, you know, the clarity of, you know, I don't know what US, whatever they want to call them, they're drones.
Yeah.
And, you know, the camera work on them has become quite sophisticated. And it would seem to me that if I'm an officer and, you know, the drone guys can see something I can't, or even something that may be in danger of for a canine unit, before you send that dog in, or as the dog approaches, you know, be aware that we spotted what potentially could be.
Or didn't spot.
Or didn't spot, yeah, exactly. We can't see that from here that the person's armed. I don't see the harm in that being part of the training, which might be a whole other issue. But, you know, from the videos I've seen watching different angles and drones and different, you know, air units, some of the camera work is amazing and the things that they're seeing. So, and I'm sure ours is pretty top notch as well. You know, being able to communicate that to the field in real time would be beneficial.
Yeah.
So I just would like to see more clarity to it as far as wording and how it should be, what the training is exactly. What is our capability? What are those drones' capability when it comes to detail? How far are they able to zoom? Are they able to really distinguish potential threats to any officer or canine officer?
For sure. Member Weimar?
I have nothing. I'm listening to all of you and pretty much agreeing.
Okay. Member Calderon? Well, before you go, then I'll explain mine since you took forever. I think I'm in agreement with Executive Director McDermott. Like, I don't want to necessarily go to the chief yet on kind of a pushback, but I want to push back enough where I think I might ask Sergeant Solis to. Somebody's messing with cord. Sorry, squirrel. Zola, what? Sorry.
Okay.
The sergeant to give us a little bit more background on the training when it comes to SWAT with the drones, the training on when to communicate and when not to communicate, because I think that's really what my sticking point is. I don't know the training. I don't know what they do. So maybe just kind of an overview or even just something before we want to go deeper into this rabbit hole, because I can't in good conscience. I don't like the response but I also don't know as much as they do. So I want to know maybe more before we go to Chief Medina.
And that's kind of my premise behind it. I want to know more information
before
we go on. Again, to my point prior is that when we make recommendations, I want to ensure that we have the context behind it, the whole context, even if it takes a little bit to get there, right? Because we can recommend this even outside of cycle if we want to. So we're not limited to that cycle period. Obviously, it's in review right now. Or not review no more, but it was. It'll come back again up this year sometime. And then if not, we can do it out of cycle as well.
Yeah, let's get some more information. Sure.
So Executive Director McDermott, I don't know if it is Sergeant Solis or not, if we can get more information.
Basically, we can either coordinate with the academy, or if it is more specialized with SWAT, we can.
It is.
Yeah.
So what I comment about was more of the training that we give to the department as a whole, cadets, officers. You are 100% correct. Tactical, they have specialized training because it is a tactical team. We are not involved in their training. So it could very well be the way they train with their own units that manage or fly the UAS might be a little more specific, different than what it is for everybody else. Because when they get called out, it is just them as a team working. Everybody else, it's doing a less risky positions.
Right.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, based on these situations that this is coming to be, they are usually tactical. That is usually the response is like, well, we always train together. We know this, that, whatever. So I guess basically what I would do, if I understand the board correctly, is reach out more than likely to the tactical individual and basically request either more information, or if they want to give a presentation, or just kind of discuss with them to get at what you, as a board, or, you know, wanting to know more information about, so.
Yeah, I think that's the request, is to reach out to the commander of SWAT to come up with more information, whether it be presentation, leave it kind of vague for specific purposes, but mostly to focus around usage of drones, communication, around those tactical situations. Is that fair for the board? Or are you going to keep coughing? You guys good with that?
Yeah, I'd love to see a presentation. As a dog person,
Yeah.
we just lost a dog, which I thought was horrendous. I would love to be able to know just what training those guys are having. So, yeah, we did appreciate it.
Just for clarification there, when you, canine is going to be like sort of a separate subsect, so do you want
But-
all of it, or just?
No, just
For
the
now,
SWAT,
the
the SWAT
drone and
part's
then-
gonna coincide, they kind of coincide anyway, so.
Somewhat.
They can, probably it's gonna be SWAT that's able to give us the information about the drones itself.
Yeah. Let's call those separate for sure for the SWAT.
Okay, forget the dogs then, they're only dogs.
No, but I do want to kind of capitalize on kind of what you're saying here, is SWAT is one thing, because I believe the K9 units and other possible drone usage falls under outside of SWAT, which would fall under Sergeant Solis, your purview, right? For drones with K9 units, or is that still specialty?
Pretty much all drone training, it's special, whether it's through the tactical unit or the other drones that we utilize within the department. They all have their own specialized training.
Okay.
And canines are pretty much
also
under
SWAT,
SWAT, so.
SWAT, okay.
I think it would be, if you want to talk about drone usage and SWAT, that's one topic.
Mm-hmm.
And then at another time, canine usage and tactical would be like another thing. So, you know, for both timing and focus.
Focus, right. I don't want to go too broad because we could, but I think that's something we can look into about canines with SWAT. But for this particular thing, let's just focus on SWAT and drones.
Let's clarify, there's two requests then, so yours is the SWAT with drones, and yours is just SWAT with K9 separately. And the reason why is because we want to separate those so they're on the agenda item, they're individually different, and they're identifiable by the public, right?
Yep.
So, and for Executive Director McDermott to be able to request the right things.
So I will reach out to the appropriate individual and see how they want to do that. I don't know if it'll be by next month, but work on those topics.
Thank you.
Good with that? Cool. And thank you, Sergeant Solis. Sorry for bringing you up. We just had some questions. I was like, maybe you might know. Sorry for throwing you to the wolves on that one. So next order of business is the use of cell site stimulator technology presentation request by our very own Vice Chair, Aaron Calderon.
Sorry, someone cough. So I brought this up during our policy subcommittee. So we reviewed, we had no recommendations for the SOP 2-14, the use of cell site simulator technology. The policy's written really, really well. It's relatively new as well, but I wanted an overview of the program and how APD uses it, implements it, intends to ensure data is secure, because site simulators are just that. They mimic a cell phone tower and receive data. And so, of course, APD has policies on storage of data and just different ones within that, but we actually want a policy for the board to receive as well as the public to receive. And so that's the recommendation, the request I had at that subcommittee. And of course, I just want the buy-in of the board members and approval of it. So Executive Director McDermott or Deputy Director Ali can request it formally. So.
Yeah, I mean, if we're holding on to data, I want to make sure we are Sorry, I'm speaking on the mute again. Yes, no, anytime we're collecting data, we need to make sure we're in compliance, we understand, and all that stuff. So yes, I'm in full support of that, so.
And to clarify, I just want to make sure I know the topic. So basically, you're wanting to know what is the technology, how it is used, and then what is the information that they collect, and what do they do with it, right?
And also to make sure that they are complying with state and federal regulations when it comes to data storage and collection. And also, yeah, and around cybersecurity, yeah, all that fun stuff. So it'll be nice and boring for a lot of people, talking about data and cybersecurity and data compliance. We don't have a data compliance tool. Okay, cool. Board member, we all good with that? Cool. Thank you, Executive Director McDermott. Do we, Ms. Brillo, do we need to make a motion on that? Since it's just a request, I don't think so, but I just want to confirm.
I don't believe so.
Okay, cool. Then we'll move on to the next order of business, which is other business. So any board members have any other topics they're looking up? Notes. Okay.
You as well had to make a motion for us to adjourn.
We don't?
No.
Oh.
I just did it because I did. We don't have to.
Cool. So then the next order of business is the adjournment. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting will be held on Thursday, July 10th, 2025. With that, I am going to take a roll call vote I make a motion to adjourn at 8:31 p.m. May I get a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Member Calderon. Ms. Brella, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Member Bolianis?
Approved.
Member Budenaro? Member Calderon?
Approved.
Member Weimer? Approved. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That motion passed unanimously.
Thank you all, and thank you, and everyone have a great rest of the evening.